protocol. Please only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Please ensure your mics are muted when you are not speaking. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes highlighted at the start of the hearing and contained within the agenda pack. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, refer to the page number. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. If there is more than one application, parties are advised that after each application is heard in turn, as set out in the agenda pack, the subcommittee will not retire after each application. The parties can contact the licensing service to be informed of the decision the following day, or can simply wait until they are notified of the decision. That will be 5 working days. Please could I ask the subcommittee to appoint a chair?
Sheila, would you like to nominate?
Yes, thank you. I would like to nominate as chair Councillor Penny Root. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy with that. Thank you very much. In that case, I think I probably pick up from here on in, unless I'm wrong about that, and somebody will correct me. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming. First of all, on the order of business, we've got apologies for absence. Unfortunately, we have had one apology for absence from Councillor Conway, who was due to sit but unfortunately isn't able to make it. Councillor Suso-Ronge and I are here, and it's perfectly possible to have this hearing with 2 councillors, so we will continue as we are. I now have to ask whether anyone has declarations of interest which they need to mention. I don't. No, looks as though we don't have that. In that case, I just want to say before we go on, we've got quite a lot of business to get through this afternoon. So my suggestion was going to be that for the first item, which is Oarsman Organics, that we will sort of schedule in until probably 3 o'clock for that. And therefore, I just was basically going to say to everybody who is not here for Oarsman Organics, if you would like to go away and come back at 3 o'clock, we'll make sure that we don't do any other business before 3 o'clock. So you don't have to sit here, and I know, for instance, that Councillor Webb is here for a different item. And so if people would like to go away and come back at 3 o'clock, then they're very welcome to do so. Of course, if you want to sit through and hear what has to be said about Oarsman Organics, you're welcome to stay as well. But I'm just giving that option. So perhaps at this point, Amanda, shall I ask you if you would mind talking through the procedures?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to go through the procedure, the hearing procedure for this afternoon, which applies to each application. So step 1, the appointment of chair and introduction has just been done. Step 2, the licensing officer will outline the report. Step 3, the applicant's case. The applicant will present their case and in support of their application. Step 4, responsible authorities. The chair will invite the relevant responsible authorities in attendance to highlight their reasons for objecting to the application as contained within the report. Step 5, other persons. The chair will invite other persons, that's local residents or ward councillors, in attendance to present their case, highlighting their reasons for objecting to the supporting application as contained within their written submissions. Step 6, discussion. The chair will structure and lead on a discussion on the information presented, enabling the subcommittee members to clarify any points raised and ask any questions if necessary. Closing remarks. The chair will then ask the responsible authorities, local residents, other persons, ward councillors and applicants, and the licensing officer if they have any final comments to make. These comments can only be made in relation to issues raised during the discussion. These remarks shall be brief. And then final clarification, the licensing committee members will have any final opportunity to seek clarification on any points raised, following which the chair will conclude the discussion and the sessions, and parties will be able to leave the meeting at that stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So in a nutshell, what we'll do is we'll have the licensing officer will outline the case. Then perhaps we'll do introductions to everybody who's relevant to the particular case to introduce themselves and say who they are. And then we'll hear from the relevant authorities. Then we'll hear from the applicant about and then we'll hear from the relevant authorities. And we'll have some questions for clarification before we move into the discussion phase, and we'll take it from there. Good. So at this point, if I could ask for the first item on the agenda, which is the Orsman Road item, if the licensing officer would mind, please do the outlining of what this application is all about.
Thank you, Chair. So the first item for this afternoon is for an application under premises license, application for a premises license under the Licensing Act 2003, Section 17, for Orsman Road Organic, 7D, Canal Side Studios, 2 to 4 Orsman Road, to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption of the premises Monday to Sunday from 0800 to 2300, as stated within the report. Police have withdrawn their representation based on set of agreed conditions, and this document has been circulated. Representations remain from environmental enforcement, licensing, and other persons. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, let's just introduce ourselves. Everybody who has who is relevant to this particular case, if you could say who you are. I'll introduce myself first. I'm obviously chairing the meeting today. I'm Councillor Penny Root, and I am a representative for Victoria Ward. Councillor Suso-Wrong?
Yes, I'm Councillor Sheila Suso-Runga, and I'm the councillor for Hackney Central Ward. Thank you.
If I could ask the officers here to introduce themselves, please.
Peter Gray, Governance Officer.
Thank you.
Amanda North, solicitor, supporting members this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart?
Hi, I'm David Stewart. I'm Team Leader, Licensing and Technical Support, making representation on behalf of the Licensing Authority.
Now, I believe we have Mr. Dadds here. Is that right?
Yes, hello, Chair. I'm David Dadds on behalf of the applicant. We don't have the applicant. I don't want to say too much because it's a public hearing, but the applicant has been admitted to hospital last night. But I've got instructions to proceed.
Okay, so the applicant is Mr. Yannick. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. We also have interested parties who I think are being represented by Councillor Rathbone. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. And aside from that, sorry, we've got one other person missing, I think, from the. Who have we missed out that we've not mentioned who needs an introduction? Oh, the police. Oh, the police, and actually, are the police here?
I believe the police and environmental health, we've agreed a position. I think they've withdrawn.
Okay.
Chair, PC Griggs, I can see, is on the call. Amanda Griggs.
Yes.
Yes, Chair, I do believe that the police have agreed conditions,
Okay.
and I think I'm not sure if environmental have actually sent us in confirmation. Suba, can you confirm? Have environmental confirmed?
We have not received any communication from environmental enforcement regarding the
Okay, right. Okay, so but they've proposed conditions, haven't they? So
That's right, yes.
Yeah, so basically it's whether or not members would want to consider those conditions as part of the decision if they're minded to approve.
Right. And those are the conditions that have come through separately, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think they're part of the report.
Oh, I think, sorry, no, I've got police and group conditions separate.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah, that's right. The police have sent through conditions, and the environmental conditions are in the report,
Yeah,
and they're standard, fairly standard. Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So at this point, then we need to hear from Mr. Dadds, I think, don't we? So outline the basis of the application, please, Mr. Dadds.
Yes, thank you. Chair, do we have only 2 councillors today? Sorry, have I missed that there are others? And,
Yes,
and, I wonder whether those that are not at this hearing or not speaking at the moment, can their screens go off? Because then I can just see the councillors. That would be helpful.
The councillors are Councillor Penny Root, who's the chair, as you've heard, Mr. Dadds, and Sheila Susa Runga is the other councillor. Unfortunately, we've had a late apology from the third councillor who's not able to be here, and that was mentioned in the introduction. I don't know if you were here for the introduction.
I wasn't. I couldn't get through the link,
right.
So but I'm here now. Yeah. So great.
Okay, that's fine. So unfortunately, we've covered that. Apologies were literally received a very short time ago that they're not able to attend.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for that clarification. Chair, this is a fairly straightforward application. We have applied, as you can see, just to core hours, less than that, on as an off license. We've met the police at the premises. We've discussed and agreed conditions with the police, and you have those conditions set out. We've accepted, and if that's not been communicated, we agreed conditions of environmental health. It's a new premises, so clearly there's no evidence of any past trading or any matters arising. The conditions are more than satisfactory to promote the licensing objectives. The applicant is a person that holds a personal license, a person of good character, and in relation to planning applications going in relation to regularising planning, but obviously planning is a separate matter altogether. So this application complies with your licensing policy conditions, as I say, by the police. Environmental health agreed. The police are the main source of advice on crime disorder, as set out in the statutory guidance 2.1. And unless I can assist you further, we ask that the application be granted.
Okay. Right. I think that at this point, then, we probably, I don't think I have any matters of clarification at this point, although it depends a bit, because we could get into some of the issues around the planning now, if you would like to tackle some of those issues at this stage, Mr. Dadds. Is that something?
Yes, my instructions are that the landlord of the premises is applying for the change of use from the planning. Clearly, at the moment, as I understand, it does have obviously the planning classifications have changed, but it would be E1 or sui generis, a drinking establishment. So I believe that the planning would be permissible for the off license, because it will be E1, but that is going to be done. So that will be, a matter which is separate from licensing, but obviously can be subject to us making sure we've got the relevant consent from the planning authority. Okay. And I don't think planning have raised any objection in relation to this application. So I don't believe there are any planning objections at all.
Perhaps I'll start with Councillor Susa and see if she has any questions that she'd like to put at this stage. I do have a couple of questions actually for clarification, but I'll let her go first.
Thank you. I just wanted to actually find out the actual name of the person who is on the premises license. Who is the person who is the named person on the premises license? And is there also a named designated supervisor?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. On Appendix A in your agenda, I don't seem to have a page number, but you'll see that the applicant is Mr. Yannick, Y-A-N-I-K, and he is nominated as the designated premises supervisor. So that is within the application. I don't know, do you have the agenda before you?
I do have the agenda, but I was just wanting to make absolutely sure that I understood that the applicant also was the premises licensee or the designated supervisor. So thank you very much. You have clarified that for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. They're both the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Can I just, so as I understand it, then well, okay, let's hear from the other people first, because we might have more questions later on. Let's move on to hear from others first. So let's hear from Stuart. That's all right, please.
Sorry, Chair, was that me that you wanted to hear from?
Yes, I think so. I think it's your representing.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So my representation is in Appendix B and B2 in today's report. So I just raised not so much concerns, but just some issues when I popped down to the site on the 28th of June. I can see that it does require some conversion of the site from its existing arrangement and the installation of the shop front. So I did check the planning records, and I could see that a planning application is made. It's something that I'm hoping that we could get a bit of clarification on today in today's meeting about the links between the applicant for this site and the operator of the neighbouring site, which we've had issues with in the past, which is where the concern around the promotion of the licensing objectives arises. So I'll leave it there for now, Chair, and hopefully we'll get to that in the discussion phase.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry. In that case, thank you. I think we'll probably go into some of this in more depth in the discussion phase. And but for now, if we could hear also from Councillor Rathbone, who is speaking on behalf of residents, I believe. Is that right, Councillor Rathbone?
Yes, I am, and also for ward councillors who from Hoxton East who give their apologies. They're all away. This is August. For various reasons, they can't attend, so I've agreed to attend. I'm a senior councillor, and also for many years I've been chair of many licensing subcommittees. I've received a lot of information from residents, and Chair, I don't really. It would take half an hour or more for me to relate it all. I draw your attention to the Appendix C1, C2, C3, and I think if you take an overall picture of that, you can see that residents are really concerned about, and as the licensing officer has just mentioned, the linkage between this application and this unit and Unit 7, which to all intents and purposes is apparently operating as a nightclub, and has caused much problem and nuisance and concern to residents about late night drinking, general behaviour, bad behaviour, and so on. One resident who actually lives in the street has written to me to say that this area is a residential area, and on the corner of the junction of Osman Road, where it meets Kingsland Road, there is a pub, The Glory. On the other side of Osman Road, there is U7 Lounge Cafe, which has a license till midnight. Further down, there is a restaurant, the Waterhouse, and further along, a pub called the Stag's Head. To add another drinking venue on this road will be extremely insensitive to the residents, and it will be very intrusive. It's also the residents' belief that residents living in the neighbourhood and surrounding area of the same building, Canal Studios, there is every reason to believe that this application is being made by the same owners of U7. It is important that the council are aware of this when considering to grant this application, as the owners have been extremely problematic for all the nearby residents. And I don't really want to go into the ins and outs of it, Chair, but set to say that I think the word that I would describe, and that is my word to describe the situation, is that people have been intimidated by people involved with the U7 club, and such that that's the reason I'm here, is because residents feel intimidated and they don't wish to appear at this licensing committee. I find that a great concern of democracy, that people should be able to appear in a public committee, make their views known about their own area. But of course, I've agreed to come along, but I think you need to take a view about that as well.
There's a legal point there, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Dadds.
Obviously, you have Amanda North here.
I haven't finished, by the way, Mr. Dadds. I didn't interrupt you, so I wish you wouldn't interrupt me.
Sir, I didn't interrupt you. I asked the chair if I could interrupt insofar as a legal issue has arisen. And because we're virtual, it's very difficult. So I apologise. Madam Chair, could I continue?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would ask people if they do want to interrupt if they can, to raise their hands. But in this particular occasion, go ahead and tell us what your legal issue is.
Thank you. Firstly, Councillor Rathbone will be aware that he hasn't made a representation in his own right. So therefore, any opinion that he has or comment he has about his own view should be disregarded, because he could have written within 28 days. He has not. In relation to intimidation, that has not been raised directly to me. And as you know, you have no primary evidence for that. And I have been here before with other premises where residents are represented by councillors or individuals. I would say to disregard those comments, because you have no evidence to support that, and only in exceptional circumstances should, residents' addresses be extracted or excluded. I've had for this applicant, I've had no suggestion by the police of inappropriateness or any intimidation. There's no crime reference number. It's a slur on the.
All right. I think we'll press ahead and say that we have had representations from local residents, which are included in Appendix C. We will be drawing on those comments as directly made to the committee and made within the time available, and we will press on
and what do you say? What do you say about
taking account of Councillor Rathbone's final comment as we move forward? So, Councillor Rathbone,
thank you.
Just carry on, and we'll pass it on.
Okay, I'll carry on, shall I, Chair?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you very much. So just to say that I'm still representing.
Sorry, Councillor Rathbone, I've just noticed that Amanda's hand is up as well. Sorry, Amanda.
All right, okay.
Sorry, I was only just going to clarify for Mr. Dadd's benefit is that we do understand that Councillor Rathbone hasn't made a representation in his own right, but he's here on behalf of the ward councillors, he said in his introduction, because they're unable to be here today, but they were asked to make a representation on behalf of the local residents. So that is what he's that's the purpose of his representation today.
Yeah. Well,
I appreciate that the comment, you're not happy with the comments that he's making. However, we need to give him the chance to make his representation, and then in fairness, you'll be entitled to have your say as well. Thanks.
Mr. Dadds?
Yes, all I would say is that we've just got to be careful, as you said. The residents have made representation. They can ask people to speak on their behalf. This councillor, Councillor Rathbone, is not making his own representation. He's speaking on behalf, and he's not representing the ward councillors because they haven't made a representation. he is representing the residents on their behalf. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that we're not dealing with ward councillors written in or Councillor Rathbone. I just want to get that clear, if that's all right. Thank you.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you.
Councillor Rathbone, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. I don't really want to get into a discussion because obviously I've got comments on Mr. Dadd's comments because he's not correct. But I do want to just say what I've got to say uninterrupted, because I didn't interrupt Mr. Dadd's and he should be aware of that. We have a discussion period later in the meeting. So just continuing on, I'm just going to refer to the appendix, just try to draw your attention to some of the things that the residents have said that they wanted me to draw attention to. In Appendix C2, the resident is saying that what was once our communal area shared and enjoyed by us all by the canal has now been taken over and is now being used for clients as an outside bar. The application is for a unit that is next to the same bar and if granted would increase the problems and stresses of living within the vicinity of a drinking establishment. Going on to Appendix C3, they mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, about the other pubs, but they also mentioned that this venue point 2 on Appendix C3 says this venue has been extremely problematic for the residents living in the neighbourhood surrounding and in the same building of Canal Studios. There is every reason to believe that this application is being made by the same owners at View 7. It is important that the council are aware of this. And then there's a little bit of a puzzlement of Appendix C5 that apparently a fence is being built. And the residents are concerned about the fenced area and whether it's actually legal or not. And I don't know whether that's actually a matter for planning. And then just finally, residents are just saying that children use the street as a school street because there are 3 schools within the vicinity, and also that as far as it goes, it is now very much a residential area. And as I happen to have lived in Hackney for over 60 years now, I do remember that it used to be factories down there, but now all those factories are occupied by residents who obviously want peace of mind and don't want late night establishments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rathbone. I do have one clarification question to put to you, really, which is that as I read through the objections in Appendix C, a lot of them are written almost as though this is an application for another drinking establishment, when in fact it is an application for an off license. So it's not quite the same thing. So I wonder if you how you feel that sort of counteracts some of the comments that they've made in their objections.
Well, Mr. Dadds will be interrupting me again, won't he, very quickly, if I sort of start to go down the line of discussing the relationship between Unit 7 and this application. And of course, Unit 7 is something different, but it's actually the same thing. The residents know only too well. They've tried to have discussions with the owners of Unit 7, who they know are behind this application, to try and as it were mediate, but that has just not been possible, and they feel that this is just yet another extension of Unit 7. That's the way the residents particularly understand it. If I could just say, because I've forgotten to say, I just felt that, and I discussed this with the residents, that because of the problems that have apparently been going on for some years, it would seem, that and in fact the ward councillors informed me of this as well, is that maybe there might be the chance, if everybody was in agreement, residents and the owners, to have some form of mediation in a peaceful and non-threatening environment, maybe an independent mediation, to try and sort some of these problems out, which are clearly have been continuing on for a considerable period of time, so that people in Orsman Road can live in peace, and businesses can continue their business, and the residents can continue to have their lives in a peaceful way. Thank you.
We'll perhaps put that to Mr. Dadds in a moment. In
Yeah.
the discussion phase. And I do think that, you know, both because of what you said and what Mr. Tuitt said, that we are obviously going to have to look at what the relationship is between this application and the neighbouring Unit 7 to some extent. One question that I have for you is again a question about the fact that this isn't for, it's not for a restaurant, it's not for a pub, it's not for a bar. This is an application for a shop to have off sales, and so some of the I guess some of the fears that some of the neighbours might have. It just occurs to me that I can see that neighbours could be quite disturbed by noise and what have you at closing time. And as things stand at the moment with this application, we're looking at a closing time to stop selling alcohol at 11 o'clock, which is the same as the pub's closing time mostly. So I'm just wondering if you think that residents might have a different attitude if we were to reduce the off sales time to something like 9 o'clock, to make that the time that they could sell alcohol until, so that you know, presumably you would have the same issues of drunken people spilling out of the shop at the same time as the pubs and clubs, what have you. Do you think that would go any way towards alleviating local people's concerns?
I don't think it would alleviate their concerns, but it does sound like a helpful gesture in such a situation. I think, as you can tell yourself, the very obvious problem here is people drinking outside, and they just see this application as an extension of people drinking outside in the street and on the canal side as well, and causing nuisance. So even at 9 o'clock at night, that's still a nuisance. You know, children have to go to bed, there's still noise and so on. I think that it's the link with the next door establishment, or what exactly is that link, is the problematic situation. If that could be clarified to such an extent that it was shown that this was not linked in any way, shape or form, and so on, then I think that would be a much more helpful way forward. But certainly restricting the lateness of the hour would be helpful.
Thank you. Before we move on to the discussion stage, I wonder if I can ask Councillor Sousa-Ronje if she's got any further questions for either you or Mr. Tuitt before we move on to the discussion phase.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Root. I wondered if we could ask if and when the premises is functioning, what sort of training could we have for staff that might be helpful in influencing a good relationship between the actual business, the licensee, and the immediate community. Maybe we could hear about any sort of good staff training and refresher training, particularly as we're discussing what happens outside of premises as well as inside. I wonder if there would be any comment that could be made by the applicant or the representative here about staff training for the future.
Okay, let's hear first of all perhaps from Mr. Tuitt if he has any kind of off-the-shelf training that he could offer or recommend. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think there's some courses in relation to responsible alcohol retailing, but generally speaking, training is often a condition attached to licenses. I'd have to have a think about specifically what that could entail, but it's certainly, I'd be a bit surprised if it's not already in this application. But that's something I can check.
There is something relevant to that in the application. Mr. Dadds, perhaps you can help us with that. I think there is something in the conditions about training, isn't there? And
yes, there's sufficient
on an annual basis.
Yeah, there's sufficient protection round training. Responsible retailing is conditioned, and also the keeping of records and records for inspection. And as I said previously, 2.15 and 9.12 of the guidance says that the responsible authorities, the police, for example, are responsible authority for crime disorder. They raise no objections, and we've agreed conditions with them. Environmental health about noise pollution, they would take the lead on that, and they don't make any objections either. And I don't think the licensing authority generally are raising any objections, but seeking points of clarification on is there a separation between Unit 7 and my client with this premises. So, but in relation to your question, Councillor, there's certainly safeguarding in regards to training and record keeping for the off license.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think at this point we probably do need to move on to discussion phase rather than questions for clarification. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Dadds, what is the connection between your applicant here and the other neighbouring premises? What is the connection there?
Yes. Would you allow me firstly just to comment generally on the on this issue that's raised, because I think it's important that I at least comment on that and then just clarify the relationship. The Unit 7 is a licensed premises, and I think it's and David Stewart may have to correct me because I don't have that license in front of me, but I think they're licensed till about 12 o'clock midnight, and I think it was subject to a review previously, and that review was around one issue of crime disorder, I think occurring back in September 2020. And then after that, the issues arising were about breaches of condition. I don't think there's ever been a review or matters arising of crime disorder complaint that's been about breaches of condition. So I know nothing about the, Unit 7 having an issue with public nuisance, crime disorder, or anything of recent by the by licensing authority or the police or environmental health about undermining a licensing objective of crime disorder, public nuisance. I know nothing at all, because they're my client too, but I don't have anything there, and David can clarify that if that's the case. I think there's been some suggestion of breaches of conditions, which is a separate matter, which I think Mr. Chalice has dealt with. If I've got that name right, I apologise if I've got it wrong, Mr. Chewett. In relation to that premises, it is licensed. There's no review. There's no ongoing proceedings. It operates.
There is a stop notice.
No, sorry, I don't know who's speaking. So, so in relation to licensing, there, as I understand it, there is no matters arising on licensing. But all that said and done, Chair, that's not relevant to here, because this is a separate unit which is going to be licensed by the landlord for an off license to my client, Mr. Yannick, and there is a separation of the business and ownership, so that they're not linked. But in any event, I'm not going to stand here and just or sit here and say I accept the criticism for Unit 7, because if Unit 7, if residents have got a problem with Unit 7, as you know, direct them to the responsible authorities, direct them to councillors, and they're entitled to call a review if there are issues. But that can't be a grounds to which to say, well, this off license that has no connection, and even if it did have a connection, where's the evidence that you have that they are primary evidence that Unit 7 are undermining the licensing objectives? It has a license. But coming to this anyway, there is a separation. My client will have his own separate license for occupation. He has his own separate license. The police have been down and had a chat with my client, met me on site. We talked it through. It's a very small unit. You've seen the plans. You've seen the conditions. And as I say, I direct you, and I know Amanda will go through it later, but 2.15 of the guidance, 9.12, 9.15 of the statutory guidance says that the responsible authorities, the police, are for policing, environmental health for environmental health matters. There are no objections by those responsible authorities.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we've made that point several times.
I won't make it again then.
Can I just point out to you why it seems to me that there is some significant interest in the neighbouring premise? Partly it's because according to Mr. Tewitt's submission here, it's not the applicant today who is seeking the planning permission for this to be an off-licence shop. It is the owner of Unit 7 who is seeking that
Yes.
planning permission. So clearly there's some sort of business connection there. Otherwise, why would that be happening? So I think
I can answer that.
okay, well, let me just make my other point too.
Oh, sorry,
so
yeah.
Answer it at the same time. And when we look at the plans for the area, we've already heard from Mr. Tewitt that the building itself isn't finished. So it's actually rather difficult to see how the layout of the building is going to work. And since it is connected directly to Unit 7, and local residents are expressing concern about how the two premises may be joined up on some of the external areas, in particular with the car park and the canal side, where there's clearly the risk of noise happening. You can see why it is of relevance that there is a connection between these two businesses. And to say that there isn't seems to me a little bit disingenuous, frankly.
Well, sorry, Madam, in relation to the, I don't mean to be disingenuous. I'm just saying from a licensing point of view, and we are at the licensing committee, they're two separate license applicants, two separate individuals. So that they're not the same applicant or have any business interests that are linked in sense of the operation of the business. But I'll answer directly those points. In relation to the premises, the whole premises is occupied by the owners of Unit 7. They will be our landlord. Yes. So they obviously, and I said earlier on that the landlord is applying for the change of use and the planning permission. So I believe that has been submitted, and that's responsible. You'd expect that to happen, and that has happened. We will have a license to occupy, so we will have our own license. Property rights are separate from licensing, and the licensing authority don't get involved in that. But as I've said, my client will have his own license to occupy. He has his own license. His premises license. He has his own personal license. He's a person of good character, and as I say, no objection to the police, environmental health. In relation to the external areas, we have no external areas. We just have this off license. And when you say about not finished, well, no, we've put planning permission in. It's not finished. The works have not finished, and that is sometimes typical of licensed premises doing variations or changing. You wouldn't have to wait, and we don't have to wait. You can see what it's going to be like because you've got the plans. We have to we have to develop this site, or I would say do the necessary works of the new shop front and put the counter in accordance with the plan. If it's not in accordance with the plan, we'll have to do a variation later before we open. So in other words, you can see the unit, you can see the door, where the cameras are going to be. The plan is provided in accordance with the Licensing Act and is valid. So you see the application before you and the plan, and you can see from the plan there is no external areas. Now, I don't know, and I can't recall what the position is with Unit 7 and off sales, but in any event, they have their own license until midnight. Our license is only until 2300 hours, and clearly is an off. You're not allowed to consume alcohol outside. You know what an off license is, and there's no intention for that. We don't own any land to the side. We only have a license in relation to the off license. And as I say, the police, environmental health know what the position is, and there's the application before you. So I think I've addressed the question about external area. I've addressed you in relation to, well, it's not unusual to have premises being developed whilst an application is made. You have all the drawings set out, and there is I've clarified the position why the plan permission is being made by our landlord, and obviously we will have a license or a short lease to occupy, opting out of the Landlord and Tenant Act.
Amanda has got her hand up. Amanda, what would you like to say?
Yes, Chair. Are you in discussion phase yet? Yeah. So, I don't know, through the chair, I was thinking, Chair, that you may want clarification to assist you on the application. Chair, I don't know if you'd like to ask about what the applicant's previous experience was of running an off license. What Mr. Dad says that the applicant is of good character, but we've not heard a great deal about the applicant. Unfortunately, the applicant's not here today due to circumstances beyond their control. But given that they've now been taken ill, what's the position about staff, etc.? And I'd say if we could hear a bit about the applicant and their experience and what they're bringing to the actual premises, and also, Chair, whether or not you want to explore whether, given the concerns that it's in a residential area, why has the applicant chosen this particular location to set up their business? Is there, you know, anything further away from local residents to reduce the impact? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, I think Amanda's, I'm not going to repeat all of that. Why don't I?
No, I've written it down, so I can answer that if you want.
Thank you.
In relation to the licensee, the applicant clearly has a personal license, so they are a person of good character. Otherwise, they can't hold a personal license, and obviously they've done the training and the DBS check. My instructions were that the applicant has about 7 years experience in the trade and certainly knows all the matters arising, and the police asked questions of the applicant, spoke to the applicant in person at the premises, and I was present, and they were satisfied, I say, with the questions that they asked. There is a separation, as you know. This is a premises license application, so we're talking about the premises, and separation of personal licenses. And personal licenses, we don't have to judge individuals, because once they've got the personal license, the committee take that as an acceptable standard that that person has passed and that has the license. In relation to the area, I'm sorry, I don't know if Amanda's been to the premises, but it's not a residential area. It's a mixed-use area. This is a commercial premises. Opposite, there's a commercial pub. There's a 1 or 2 residential. Then there's another commercial. Then there's the canal. It's a mixed-use area, and to look at whether this is an appropriate space, well, yes, of course it is, because it's a commercial building, and it's already a licensed premises. You have the pub across the road. This is for an off license, not a on premises. But in any event, it's a mixed-use area, so it is appropriate to make the application. And it'll be, sorry.
I'm slightly surprised that you characterise it like that, because as Councillor Rathbone said, it was once an area with lots of factories, but most of those on any of the upper floors are now converted into flats. And there are new developments along the canal, on both sides of the canal, which are predominantly flats with ground floor businesses on the ground floor. So some mixed use in terms of retail, but not mixed use in the conventional sense. I think that's an exaggeration for it.
Well, let me answer that, if you don't mind. Sorry, it might be that we're coming from it slightly differently. I'm just looking for the and I don't want to be misunderstood, and I don't want to misunderstand what you're saying either. But I think we've got, if we look at the plan, Appendix D, and I'm only looking at the street, madam. I'm not commenting of the premises across the canalway where you got the new blocks. I'm just talking about this street. Yes. So obviously I could go further and talk about Kingsland Road and the mixed use there. But when I stood at our premises, which you can see on the plan, you've got the public house that says commercial. You've got us completely commercial at the front, and then behind residential. You've got, I think it's the premises opposite, I think it's like house, or there's a factory there. There's a commercial business there. There's a commercial business all the way along the road there along Osborne Road, and then you've got another factory or use there. It isn't as clear that all the factories have gone. They haven't all gone. Councillor Rathbone's shaking his head. I walked through there, councillor, only a month ago with the police. So what I'm saying, it's mixed. I'm not saying it is. He's still shaking his head. I wish I could speak without interruption. That's a similar to an interruption.
Not quite.
Councillor
but anyway,
Rathbone, can you have a neutral position for the moment, please? Let Mr. Dadds make his
So I'll
representation.
just go out. I just, you know, it's just a fantasy that you're hearing from this person.
So Chair, that's a completely inappropriate comment, and it's to put me off or to intimidate me, and it shouldn't be allowed from a councillor. A councillor has to show respect. A councillor has to show respect. Well, councillor has to show respect to members of the public. I'm a member of the public. I'm coming here and I'm trying to answer your question that you asked. And I'm saying that I've been in the street. The street is mixed use. It has commercial and residential. I'm not weighing up how many residential, how many commercial, but in relation to Osborne Road, certainly in the at the early part of the road, it's a mixed use. Now, planning do not have any objection. Environmental health don't have any objection. From an environmental health point of view, that they don't raise it, and it's mixed. So I'm not saying, but I'm not saying it's residential. You've heard from Mandanal saying it's residential. I object to that classification. I'm saying it's mixed. Now, I'm not weighting what the mix percentage is, but in any event, it's this application does fall within your policy statement. There's not a cumulative impact policy in this area. It fits within policy. Hours are before 2300 hours, and the police environments have not objected. So I'm trying to answer your question as best as I can. And and the suggestion that I'm living in some fantasy land, I take that's disingenuous and shouldn't be made, those types of comments.
All right. I mean, I suppose one of the issues that occurs to me is, given that there are quite a lot of residents living there, one would think that they might be quite welcome of a shop if they felt it was going to be a useful shop that would service them. And instead of that, we've got letters from residents objecting to what is essentially a shop that's going to open there. That seems to be quite unusual for a residential area. I wonder if you've got any thoughts about why they would be objecting when actually what this shop, one, if it's well run, would be a service for them, I think.
Chair, you and I know that when there is subject to change, you very rarely get someone writing and saying, I support that. You normally get the objection. And when there is change, here, for example, we've got a number of residents, but mainly the concern is about Unit 7, not our off license and the connection. And it's about change. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a number of convenience shops along Kingsland Road. My client does believe actually this will benefit the residents, but because a resident hasn't written in doesn't mean that they object to it, and actually doesn't mean that they don't support it. And actually, a number of residents might have thought, well, actually, I like that idea. I don't want to write in to object, thinking that they don't have to write in if they support it. So it's quite,
Right.
And when you say unusual, you and I have been here many times. How many times do you, if you had an off license or shop, do you get the residents writing and say, yes, I'd like that, please? You don't get it that often.
Amanda has her hand up as well. Amanda? Oh, Amanda has dropped out of the meeting, so she'll come back in, no doubt. But meantime, Councillor Rathbone wanted to make a point. So, Councillor Rathbone.
Very much, Chair. I don't really want to prolong, otherwise it becomes a gladiatorial thing between myself and the solicitor. But just to say that I am actually representing residents, and I'm sure in regards to the comments about residential, the residents, if they were here now, would be gasping with incredulity. So I'm just reflecting how the residents have explained it to me. They have made it clear in their in their submissions that it is a residential area. They live there, and actually, I use that road quite regularly myself over very many years, and now because of the way the road system works, it's a road out of the Shoreditch area. So I do know the road quite well, and in fact I've been to 2 of the establishments in that road. So it is a residential area, and what surprises me is Mr. Dadds would try to be sort of leading away from it rather than trying to consider the needs of the residents as well, which is what you should do when you're supposed to be balanced in your approach when you're applying for a license. Obviously you have a business to consider, but you also have to consider the nuisance and problems that might be caused to the residents. That's what being residential is all about, and I'm surprised that Mr. Dadds has not really emphasized that. And secondly, I just wanted to really, I'm a bit still puzzled about the planning application. Thank you so much, Chair, for making that link, which in fact the residents have made to me, but I kind of missed it, the link of the planning application itself for these premises. And once again, it emphasises that there is a link between the 2 premises, which is still not very clear and needs to be answered.
Thank you. My next person that I was going to ask for some comment actually was Mr. Tuitt, to hear whether or not, since he's the person who first highlighted that link in this submission, if he now feels clear that he understands the connection between the applicant and Unit 7's management. And the other thing I wanted to just ask you, Mr. Tuitt, was Mr. Dadds said quite categorically that there was nothing about crime and disorder which has cropped up with regard to any licensing objections to Unit 7. Is that something you can confirm, that the crime and disorder is not an element that's cropped up in any of the licensing problems that there may have been with Unit 7?
Okay, so to answer the first question, I think I do understand the link now. Because I think Mr. Dadds said that Mr. Yannick, the applicant for this license, has a license or lease to occupy the space from the operator of Unit 7. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct? I did.
It's going to be a license or a short-term lease from the landlord. So our landlord will be the leaseholder of the, so it's a subletting, and the license will be in our name. Okay. So that landlord is the person who's made the planning application, which is the person that we previously had issues with. So yeah, I think I do understand the link, the arrangement now, so that is helpful.
Are you in any way reassured about the link, or are you more concerned about it now?
It may mean that there are implications for the other license which are there, because that person is excluded, but that is something that's a separate matter which we'll have to look into. And then in relation to your other question, Chair, about crime and disorder, I think when we applied for the review application, it's now a couple of years ago, the license was revoked. It was appealed. The appeal was dismissed. There's been a new license granted since then. I do think
there's only one issue. I think on September, a traveller party went wrong on September 2020. Other than that, I don't think there was any other.
Under this new license,
under the old license.
Under the old license, well, there was enough for the license to be revoked, and we successfully defended the decision to revoke it.
David, it was on, if you recall, sorry, madam, just try to help us both, hopefully, to remember. It was, I think, one issue of fighting or crime on September 2020, and all the other matters that arose in relation to breaches of condition, but not actually anything else arising from premises.
Yeah, breaches of conditions. So certainly undermining the licensing objectives. I think more likely the public nuisance objective, more so than the crime and disorder objectives.
But nothing on the new license at all.
Well, nothing that's led us to have to take the same level of action at this stage.
How long has the new license been in place?
I think it was
When was the new license?
January 2021, is it?
2020.
January 2021, I think, or December 2020, but it's early 2021, madam. I'm going off the top of my head, I'm afraid. But there's been no crime.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is partly because when a license is granted, it does also take a little bit of time for any kind of further action or review would take place unless there's a serious incident that the police are called in for.
It's been about
So,
18 months. It's been
Yeah.
way over a year.
Sorry, Chair, it was on April 2021, 22nd of April 2021.
April.
April 2021. Okay, so that's not 8 months. Mr. Daz, I have to say, you know, you're now saying
That's over 12 months. Yeah.
Oh, 2021, not 2022. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay.
And I wondered whether it would be helpful. I don't know if David Chewett could do it or someone, but unless I can share my screen, but I have got, because obviously I stood at the premises, I have got the Google map at the moment. And as I say, I know of the block of flats directly opposite, but then as you go down the street on the left, it's commercial. That's why I say commercial. I wonder if I could share my screen, or the officer can just bring the Google map up so we can see the street, why I'm describing it the way I describe it, because I think it would be very helpful for you, Chair.
Are you talking about the areas which are marked as factory of the current plan?
Yes, yeah, I would, because I've got the Google map on my screen, and I think it would be helpful for you to see the street.
To be perfectly honest, I mean, I am familiar with the street and I'm familiar with that building. Seeing it from the outside isn't going to tell me too much about what's happening on the inside, I'm afraid. So
no, I'm talking about
we didn't go down that route.
Yeah, I'm just talking about opposite. There's a factory, and further down the road there's factories. So I'm just trying to make it clear that there's mixed use.
Buildings, whether they're still used as factories, I don't know. They haven't been converted in the same sort of developed way that perhaps other buildings have locally. But that doesn't mean to say that they're still being used as factories. And I don't think that looking at a photo from the street view is going to tell us one way or the other what they're used for. So I'd rather not go down that route if you don't mind.
Yes, at least you can see, madam, that they're not residential. That was my point.
Well, I'm not sure you can see that they're not residential. I mean, there are plenty of former industrial buildings which are used as residential these days, and looking at them from the outside isn't going to tell me one way or the other. So, Councillor Rathbone, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I just wanted to. I don't want to prolong this no more than you do. But when I'm hearing, about recorded crime and disorder, the thing is about all of that, as I think we're all aware, that's only what's recorded in certain places. But as far as I can see from what the residents will be saying, is that this has been at least 4 years of intimidation and all kinds of disorder.
Aside, just for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, they're causing, Appendix C1, for instance, it says immense disruption, unpleasantness, and so on. And I'm sure that if you went back to the minutes of the revoking of the license, you would see a lot of comments from residents to that effect. And I think it's really important that that's taken into account for anything that is not just about what's recorded, which is important, of course. It's also about how people feel about an area, and that's usually recorded in a democratic fashion, like it is at this moment in a committee. And certainly the residents have said they have been to this committee, as it were, before, and made it plain that they are very unhappy with the all that happens around the owners of this place, Unit 7, and the area.
Okay, I have a question I'd like to ask Mr. Chewett about conditions regarding the landlord, which he said is relevant to the license of Studio 7. And because I'm a bit confused about why they should be relevant to that license, but not to this license. But before I ask that question, can I just see what Amanda would like to say? She's got her hand up. She dropped out off the call last time. She wanted to say something.
Thank you, Chair. I was only just going to ask you if you just make some further suggestions that you may want to get clarification on from Mr. Dadds. Apologies for dropping out earlier. I accidentally pressed the wrong button. But basically, I wondered if you, to assist you, Chair, about clarifying what their business plan is for the site. And they call it organic food or organics. And if you wanted to clarify what the kind of products they will be selling, etc., if that makes them more unique than other premises, which might help you understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so thank you.
Let's take my question to Mr. Stewart first, if I may, which was a question about when we've established that the landlord is the same person. Sorry, I'm hearing myself backwards. Okay.
A gentleman's just arrived, but I think the speaker's still on.
Okay. So, Mr. Stewart, when we'd established that the person who's applying for planning permission is the landlord of the property and is also the licensee, I think, of Unit 7, is that right? And that there may be some conditions in the Unit 7 license which are relevant in some way or another. Is that what you're trying to say?
Okay, so the person who's made the planning application is excluded from Unit 7, so they're not the licensee, and there's a condition which was offered to subcommittee when the license was granted that person will be excluded from that site. So just based on what's been said this afternoon, we might have to just look into that a bit further, but I should be clear that would be a separate matter.
Well, it just seems to me that if they're
Chair, what could I assist? That I mean, if Mr. Stewart believes that it is necessary, I don't think it is. But can we just ask Mr. Stewart, does he think it's necessary to have that person excluded from this off license? Because I think they have another premises nearby that's licensed that they're not excluded from. So I don't think that. But that's the direct question. Would you, Mr. Stewart, want that individual placed on this license as being excluded? Is that right, Chair? That's what we're really asking, aren't we?
I guess it is really. I mean, it does seem to me quite concerning that we've got somebody who's excluded from a neighbouring premise, now looking to get planning permission on this premise. I'm starting to wonder why, why would they not be excluded from this one too? Mr. Stewart, what are your thoughts about that?
No, I mean it's a possible, it's an option, isn't it? Whether it would allay the concerns of local residents, I don't think so.
I can say that if Mr. Stewart wants it, I don't have any objections to it. I don't think it's necessary because I don't think it's a different premises. It's an off license. But if Mr. Stewart wants it, I won't object. But I think Mr. Stewart has to seriously only ask for it if he feels it's necessary, because I don't think it is.
Presumably, if we as the planning committee felt it was necessary, as the licensing subcommittee felt it was necessary, we could also ask for it as a condition. And in those circumstances, still agree to it.
Well, I think you would have to have evidence to support that as that imposition, because conditions can only be placed on the license to avoid a mischief, and if there's no mischief, then can't replace the conditions. But as I say, I don't think does this other lady have a premises elsewhere in her name? I can't remember.
Yes,
she does. So she's a licensee somewhere else and it's not excluded from that premises. So I just want to clarify for Mr. Stewart, is it really necessary here? If he feels it is, then I won't object. I'm just putting my cards on the table.
Can I just bring Amanda in, because I think she might like to make a point on this as well.
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to ask for clarification. Ask through the chair for clarification from Mr. Dadds, I understood that the current, or the applicant of that planning application was no longer going to have any association with that premises, and therefore it's quite surprising that they are still holding themselves out as a owner, landlord, etc. When I understood that they were no longer going to be doing that, because the whole point of that condition was that they were not supposed to have any control or dealings with the premises, and they now have an additional premises that they're leasing off, which they're now the landlord of. So there's a bit of a concern possibly there that that condition is being breached slightly, and what we were led to believe is not actually now the case.
No, that's not the case. That's not the case, Amanda North. The condition relates to the management and operation of the licensed premises, which they do not have any involvement. They are still a leaseholder, and that they, in effect, sublet the premises. So that's the property side, not the license holding side, because obviously the person had a long lease, and the license got revoked. So obviously there's the subletting of the building whilst that person still has liability, but they are not involved in management or the day-to-day of licensing. So, but in any event, they'll be our landlord. That's not our responsibility. And as I've said, if Mr. Stewart believes it's necessary, we wouldn't object to that, because we will be getting a lease from our landlord. If the licensing authority believes that that needs to be looked in, that's a separate matter to this application. Although I know the condition, and my recollection of that condition is that it excludes that person from being on the premises and involved with the licensed premises. It doesn't exclude them from being the landlord.
Okay.
Collecting rent.
I think Councillor Rathbone would like to make a point, and I would like to ask Mr. Stewart what his thoughts are about possible exclusion as a condition with this. So perhaps we'll hear from Councillor Rathbone first.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, I think you would understand. You know, I am speaking on behalf of residents. And I know that the residents would say, and I won't name the person, but the person who was banned is very much in evidence, and that is the person they often deal with. That person's husband is apparently the new manager of the premises, but yeah, that person is still very much on the premises, and very involved in the management of it. And they think that's a licensing breach, which is a separate issue, I know. But I, on behalf of residents, would say that person is very much in evidence outside of that bar, in the street, and at other times, making all kinds of situations which are not very pleasant, shall we say. So it's not as though there is no connection at all, or it's a slight connection. It is a very, very deep set connection that exists in that situation.
So are you going as far as to say that if we did have this clause in the license that person was excluded from the off-license premise, that wouldn't reassure residents?
No, it would not assure residents at all. As far as they're concerned, that banned person would have very strong influence over whatever took place on these off-license premises, and indeed that person has told them that she will. So
no.
Mr. Stewart, in the light of all of that, what's your view about whether or not that's a condition you'd like to put forward?
I don't think I don't really think it would be necessary or appropriate to attach that condition in this particular case.
All right, we'll move on then.
Chair, could I just comment on Councillor Rathbone? I just asked.
Well, I think we've decided that we're not going to do it. So at the moment, I think we need to comment on that. Otherwise,
okay,
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to ask you another question, Mr. Dadds, which is really something that I raised earlier on about the operational hours of selling off sales. You know, I am mindful of the fact that one thing we definitely have is a substantial number of residents who are concerned about noise and disruption which takes place in this area late on at night. I wonder how your client might feel about box sales finishing at 9 o'clock. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that we can't hear from Mr. Yanis himself, because it's, you know, it's unusual not to be able to actually meet the licensed applicant. And it's a shame, because again, it's something which might have helped to reassure Councillor Rathbone if you'd been able to actually see this person at the hearing and hear from themselves. But
I agree with you. That would have been helpful. The police have met him, and they are reassured, and they raised an objection and withdrew. Obviously, my client, through an emergency, has been omitted. So I'm sorry, that can't be helped. But also, I know he's very conscious about getting on with his business. So I wouldn't want a delay. In relation to the organic, the idea is that organic produce, mixed produce, and it's only a small premises. In relation to the hours, Chair, I would say the hours are appropriate, and I don't think it is appropriate to reduce the hours. Obviously, you know your scope and your powers, and you could reduce it, but I'd ask you not to. It's a small premises. The hours are within framework. In fact, I think the pub framework hours in this area or licensed premises are midnight at the end of the week. So there should be no meeting of, they're not all closing at 11 in this area, because it's no cumulative impact. Is I think core hours on Friday and Saturday for a pub premises is midnight. I think restaurant might be slightly later, but so 11 o'clock isn't appropriate. It is appropriate, and it's not this inappropriateness of they're all clashing. And as I say, on crime disorder and public nuisance, both of those responsible authorities have not raised objection. It's a matter for you.
okay, thank you. Just one thing that I should also raise, which is that I am. Councillor Sister wants to say something as well, which I've spoken way too much, so I think it's going to actually.
I can't hear you now.
No, please go ahead if you want to speak first, Councillor Root, please.
No, you go first. Go on.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you to all the contributors and the very comprehensive and robust contributions we've had, and that we hope that the contributors do understand that we're trying to come to a proportionate decision here, where we protect the rights of the individual and whereby we also against the interests of the community at large. So I hope that's clearly understood, and also we wish the gentleman in question, we wish him better, and we hope that he gets better quite soon. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Very pertinent comments, I must say. Amanda, you've got your hand up as well.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just ask for clarification to Mr. Dadds as to whether or not the applicant is operating the premises on his own or with anybody else?
It will be himself, and then he'll be looking to maybe take on some part-time, but there are conditions around training staff. In relation to the comment of Councillor Rathbone about the needs of the residents, obviously my client has taken that into account by the hours are within core hours within the policy. Conditions have been put forward which are appropriate. Been working with the police, agreed conditions of environmental health, and that he says you need to look at the needs of the residents. We have done that, but it's about licensing objectives, and we say, and not only us, environmental health and the police all say that we can promote the licensing objectives of these hours that we seek.
Thank you. I have a question, because Mr. Stewart said that earlier when he visited the premises, it's a bit hard to work out exactly how it's going to be because the building work is far from finished. If we were minded to grant an off license of some sort, I just wonder how he would feel about us holding that off until the planning permission has been confirmed and the building work has been signed off by Hackney Council to everybody's satisfaction, because I feel personally a bit nervous about granting a license in circumstances which are, you know, to some degree controversial, for a building which is as yet unfinished. And I wonder if we might just be able to wait until the building is finished before any license becomes operational.
Well, I answer in two parts.
To Mr. Stewart, first of all.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know how that would be done. I guess are you talking about granting a license subject, for example, to planning permission, or is that what you mean?
Well, the relevant change of use, and also the work being concluded and signed off by the relevant inspector.
I guess if planning permission is approved for that site, the standardized planning conditions, if I'm correct, will do something like require the development in accordance with the plans and sign off where necessary by building control, etc., things like that. So I'm not sure if that's something that needs to be replicated here, but I'm just thinking how it would work in practice if what I'm being asked is for a license to be granted but to not be effective unless the building works are completed, in which case the license couldn't be effective until those, or the operation couldn't commence until those building works are done. So I'm not really sure if that would be something that you need to do if you are minded to grant the license.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda had her hand up.
Yeah, Chair, all I was going to advise is that it is difficult for us to hold off our, implementation of the license pending these things because of the length of time it sometimes takes. But it's whether or not the applicant is agreeable to that sort of condition, really.
Okay, so now it's your turn, Mr. Dance.
Yes, the statutory guidance says that there should be no duplication and they're separate regime. And I agree with David Stewart. You've actually got the plan. We cannot open this premises until the premises is in accordance with the plan. And as you know, your application's been made. If it gets refused, it's refused. In relation to the, if it's granted, it has to conform with building regulations and been signed off by the building inspector. So, if you want to put conditions saying the premise is not to be opened until consent and building regulations approved, you can. I expect you can. I mean, normally you wouldn't, but there's nothing stopping you. But as I say, this is already a commercial premises. It's already got use as a licensed premises. I'll be very surprised if this doesn't get use for E1. They may have differences on hours, of course, but I think at the moment it can operate to roughly those hours or thereabouts. So it'll be for the planning department to grant their consent and then for us to then build it out. And likewise, it's not uncommon for this license to be applied for. If this wasn't granted, for example, there'd be an appeal and that might take a year. So they may not develop it until having certainty of having the license. So at the end of the day, the two, you need them both anyway. So as David Stewart says, it's got to be signed off by the inspector. We all know the residents will know whether planning permission is granted or not. They'll be straight on to Mr. Stewart and others. So there's certainly enough eyes and ears open to ensure that planning permission is granted first.
Okay, Amanda.
Chair, I don't know if you wanted to clarify then. I was just going to say when were they intending to finalise these works and actually be open? Because I suppose that might be what residents are concerned about how long or how quickly are they going to start operating.
You know the answer to that, Stats?
No, as I understand, I think they're waiting for this license to be granted and the planning permission. Once that's done, I believe that they are, and they've been getting some quotes for a new shop front, and I think then they'll carry on with the work then. So like any normal business, I think they're waiting for their consent and then they'll plan the works.
Okay, I think, bearing in mind that we're overrunning on time quite badly here, I think I'm minded at this point to ask Councillor Suso-Munda if she's got any further questions or comments for the discussion phase, and then to move on to summings up.
No further comments at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Rathbone, I wonder, would you like to sum up and with some closing comments?
Yeah, I'll try. I'll be very brief. It's just to say that the residents do not want this to be granted at all, and that there should be some form of mediation between the owners of Unit 7 and whoever else it is involved and residents to try and work out a more peaceful solution to what's actually happening in that area. And just to say that residents are still won't be very happy to hear that you know, then they're not being considered enough by the applicants. And it's also is a shame that the, as it were, the licensee who's applying is not here today, because that would have, I think that would have been a useful for residents to know exactly who that person is and how they see things. But anyway, thanks very much, Chair, for all chairing the meeting. And I'll even say thank you to Mr. Dadds, because he's only doing his job as the applicant's solicitor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to go into the mediation issue here, because I feel that it's probably, since this premise is not even open yet, anything regarding mediation is more suitable in the context of Unit 7 rather than this one at this point. So unless Mr. Tewett feels differently, Mr. Tewett, would you like to make a few comments to sum up?
I don't think I've got anything really to sum up. I think we've heard enough. There is that concern about the link between, but I think that's been explained. And you know, if you are minded to grant, then of course we'd monitor the site as we do with many sites across the borough. So yeah, nothing further to add at this stage.
Just to be absolutely crystal clear, do you maintain your representation as it is at the moment, as which is a recommendation to not grant the license, or is that something you want to withdraw?
Well, yeah, I didn't make in my representation. I wasn't seeking refusal. It's more around clarification, which we have heard. So I still do have some concerns that, as I think I've explained. So those that link between the operator or the former operator of the neighbouring site and who has made a plan application, as we've heard about quite extensively this afternoon, that concern remains. So on that's the reason why my representation is still there.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda's just raised her hand.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm going to suggest I accept that Mr. Dadds has been as helpful as he can be, giving as much information to members to assist them in making their decision. But I appreciate that it's been unfortunate that the applicant themselves has not been present to assist you and maybe making some, answering any questions, or just being around to answer any questions from Councillor Rathbone, maybe. And I don't know whether or not Mr. Dadds would consider, and whether or not Mr. Tewett would consider, whether or not we adjourn this matter to give the applicant an opportunity to attend, and so that when you make your decision, you feel satisfied you've heard from all parties.
No, Madam, I would respond to that to say I've not requested an adjournment. No one else has. We've come to the position of closing statement. I think I'm the last person now to speak, as I've said, my client is quite keen to get his license so he can make progress. If you allow me, I'll finish my closing submission. I think it will come clear why I take that position.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to make your closing submission, then that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an application in accordance with your policy. The hours are within your framework. under the statutory guidance 182. It satisfies the police because we've met on site, they've spoken to the applicant, and they are satisfied that the licensing objectives of crime disorder are met. In relation to environmental health, we've agreed the conditions for, I believe, the waste management, and in relation to environmental health themselves of noise, they raise no objection at all. And as you heard from David Chewett, really it wasn't an objection, it was a point of seeking clarification, and he is now satisfied with that clarification. I think he, no disrespect to David, I think he's trying to have his cake and eat it. So far as using that expression, I have offered up that you could place a condition to exclude the previous, and when asked, and I've been quite open about it, we would accept that if he wanted it, and he was honest to say, well, actually, I don't think it's necessary. And I agree with him, it's not, because this premises will have its own lease license. It's got its own premises license. The individual, and this is where I think Manda North and I maybe disagree, the individual's been met by the police. They don't have any problems. He holds a personal license. He's a person of good character. There is a separation between the personal license and the premises license. This premises is in an appropriate location. It's a commercial building. It can have this as off license. No planning objections. I know we have a disagreement about whether it's mixed use. It's clearly mixed use. To what degree, proportion, and the license can be granted with the conditions that I think have been agreed to promote the licensing objectives. And unless I can assist you further, I believe the conditions agree with the police, environmental health, achieve the licensing objectives, and in effect we've overcome, I think, the licensing authority, the police, and environmental health. Residents are important. We have listened to residents. We've agreed a number of conditions with the police. I think address those concerns. I don't think they want change, but this is a change that we say will not impact on them. The hours will be closed by 11, and it's an off license taking away. And as David Chewett says, it will be watched and supervised and managed. We have the appropriate CCTV, appropriate training. It's only a small premises, and as I say, it fits within your policy. If you decide to refuse it, then obviously I'd ask for or reduce the hours. I ask you to then put your reasons in writing, so we understand why that you feel that it's not appropriate in this location. We respect, madam. I have walked down that street. I've looked at that street, and directly opposite you have resident on one side, one block. I think got 3 flats, and then the rest of the building opposite is definitely commercial. So as I say, I think I've answered all the other questions. We ask that the application is granted as amended.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And at this point then, I think we can say that we will discuss our decision at the end of this meeting, and I believe that you'll be notified of what the outline decision is by tomorrow afternoon, and then you'll have the decision in writing a little bit later on.
Super, thank you very much. Unless you need me for anything more, I will leave.
I think you're able to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye, Amanda North.
Thank you, Mr. Dadds. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
And that goes for you, Councillor Rathbone, too. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And, you're a free man as well now.
Thank you, Councillor Rathbone. Thank you.
If only.
Okay,
thanks
and
very much, Chair.
apologies to everyone else for keeping playing on so long. I'm sorry that it's taken so long to get to the next case. So next we are looking at New Dawn, I believe. Is that right? If the licensing officer could outline the application, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The second item we are going to consider for this evening is for a variation of premises license under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 for New Dawn 206 Well Street to extend the supply of alcohol for own sales until 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, to include off sales, late night refreshment, and recorded music, as stated within the report. Representations remains from the licensing and other persons, And I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I ask people who are here with regard to the New Dawn application to identify themselves, please? I can see Councillor Jessica Webb, who is one of those people. I think Kevin Jones is speaking on behalf of New Dawn. Is that right? Is Kevin Jones here?
Hi, we're here too, Kevin and Carolyn and Lorraine from New Dawn. And
Okay,
UCIC.
great. Thank you. I think again it's Ms. Stewart who's talking from the licensing team perspective. Is there anyone else here who is relevant to this particular application? No? Good, okay. In that case, I think Amanda, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Can we just double check whether or not any local residents or other persons are present?
Are there any other local residents here representing? No?
And Chair, is there no one, just to check, no one representing the landlord?
The
Given
landlord, yes, the freeholder.
They're not attending. They're not attending.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that they have
Yes.
linked in with the
Yes.
officer. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, fine.
Good, okay. In that case, if we could ask somebody from the New Dawn team to make your submission for the application, please, to introduce us. Is there anyone there? We're struggling to hear you.
Hello?
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, hi, Kevin Jones here.
Could you speak up a little more?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's better, thank you.
Well, hi there. How you doing?
We're good. And
Yeah.
what we'd like you to do is to outline your submission, please, for this application.
Chair, could you check that whether or not he's driving? Could you check if he's driving?
No, I'm not driving. I'm just
Okay.
opening up the window. Yeah, so,
Okay. All right.
right. So my name's Kevin Jones. I run a little place called New Dawn. Over at Yeah, I run a little place called New Dawn on Wells Street. It's a multifunctional community hub, come bar and roti lounge. Why I say multifunctional is that we are an affordable space that enables local people who can't afford to hire venues for £2,000, £3,000, etc., or with their minimum bar charges of £1,000, £1,200, or £1,500. We operate on a £60 an hour basis, which enables local people who live in the area to host events, but it also prevents them from having noise abatement and housing come down on them because they're maybe upsetting neighbours. Alongside that, we enable local people, in terms of young people and others who have talents and desires to operate within the arts, to have an opportunity to exhibit, to show off their works, whether that's film, whether it's photographs, whether that's paint, whether that's ceramics. And then on top of that, we also help them to learn how to make money from their art. And we do exactly the same thing with young enterprise. When I say young enterprise, young people who are based primarily at Morningside Youth Club, but we also work with other schools and universities as well as individuals to enable them to understand how commerce works. And we do that by, we haven't done it for 2.5 years, but we hand over the actual bar to local kids to run with no alcohol. But we enable local school kids from Morningside and also Gascoigne to sell lemonade, cakes, etc. They're trained, they're actually enabled to actually understand how commerce works, because many kids don't get that. And that's where it's at. So what we're looking to do now is that we've applied for a 2 o'clock license because we've been utilizing all of our 10s due to how our license currently operates. it means that because our license operates in such a way we finish at 12:30 on the official, and then 11:30, sorry, and we then need to put in a tens from 11:30 to 12, and then we need another tens for the next day, which is from 12 until whatever time it is, whether it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. We don't go anything beyond that. So we're utilizing 2 tens at the same time to apply for one event. What we're now trying to do is to avoid wasting money. We've survived the actual COVID and the lockdowns. We're now trying to basically get over that. We do not want to be a club. We do not really want to be operating till ridiculous hours. What we want to do is to operate in such a way that enables us to have a bit of flexibility, but not every Friday and Saturday night. That's not what we're after. That's not what we're about. We have a CIC, which enables us to do the creative, artistic, and charitable work we do. One of those key events that we've just had to undertake was the Wells Street People's Festival, working with local people, but us headlining that or spearheading it. And the money that comes from that goes back into the operations and activities that we do. So that's it in short.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a quick clarification question? I haven't quite understood why you have to utilize 2 tens for
because we have one which our current license operates until 11:30 in the evening. We then require 1 tens to carry us from 11:30 till 12 o'clock. Then when you cross over into the next day, you then require one from 12 until 2 or 12 until 1. So it's 2 tens that we're utilizing each time.
Okay, so fair enough. But I understand now. We'll explore that a little bit more in a little bit later on then. Thank you. Let's hear now, if we may, from David Tyrrett, if that's all right, on his representative.
Jay, it might help me just to clarify. It's 2 days of tens, not 2 tens.
Yeah, okay.
So
2 days.
So it's 1 10, but 2 days of a 10. 2 days of the annual allocation or annual entitlement to tens than it is for 2 actual temporary event notices.
So it is 2 temporary event notices because they're 1 day at a time.
No, it's 1 temporary event notice, but 2 days.
Oh, I see. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but people can apply for, is it 10 a year?
The limits have changed for 2 years.
Yeah.
You've caught me.
So
It's what is it? 26 days, 20 tens, 26 days.
Yeah.
Is that right? For 2 years.
Yeah.
And
So you have 20 tens covering 26 days.
Yeah.
20 tens covering 36 days in 2022 and 2023. And as far as we understand it, in 2024, the Home Office will revert back to the previous limit, which was 15 tens and 21 days.
Per year.
Per calendar year.
Okay. And we're expecting that for 2023.
This year and next year.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. That's helpful.
So just very quickly, my representation is at Appendix B. So within that, I just pointed out the policy. The application seeks hours that are outside of what's set out in LP3 core hours, with the authorization being seeking up to 2 o'clock at the weekends. So LP3 just asks applicants to consider what's around them and to have regard to the local area if they're seeking to go beyond the core hours. So the applicant should just identify any risks that might undermine the promotion of the licensing objective, and then put in place measures to mitigate those risks if they're looking to go beyond the core hours. I also found that there's a planning permission from 2017, but that restricts the use of the planning, restricts the use of the site. So there are hours attached to that planning permission. So if you're minded to grant, it's something else for the applicant to consider having to rectify or to address that there is a planning permission, but that's more restrictive than the hours that they're seeking. for the variation. And
Can you
LP.
just remind me, sorry, can you just remind me what the planning permission hours are?
So according to the planning register, the planning permission 2017/2980 restricts the hours of use to 9 AM to 2300 Monday to Saturday, and then 9 AM to 2030, 8:30 on Sundays. So our policy says to that application should normally be from where premises have the correct planning permission, essentially, but that doesn't prohibit the license being granted. It's just something else to bring to the applicant's attention if you are minded to grant it.
It would mean that should we be minded to grant the license as it stands at the moment, and then the New Dawn took advantage of that license, they would be in breach of their planning application as it stands at the moment.
They may be operating not in accordance with their planning permission, but it may then trigger our colleagues in planning to have to begin enforcement action if they were to continue that breach. So the planning is slightly different, where it's not automatically a breach of planning control.
Okay, thank you. But they would be in breach of planning if they took advantage. Okay, good. Kevin, I hope you've noted that. I'm not sure if you were clear about that before, but that is a complication that we've got here. I'm just going to turn now to Councillor Webb, who I think is representing residents. Is that right?
Well, Chair, as one of the councillors and in consultation with my two fellow councillors, the concern is that with the best will in the world to the venue, if you are licensing and selling alcohol until 2 AM on Friday and Saturday evenings, and they can leave, and the premises does not close until 2:30. This is a 2:30 AM extension, in effect. Best will in the world, we know that it will cause disturbance, and it is a highly residential, it's a residential street, and there's no getting around it with the best will in the world. Also, my concern is that it's just not consistent with our policy. So if you've got the gun pub across the street, their licensing hours goes to 12:30. They stop, and then it goes until 1, and people leave at 1. So I'd just say we should be consistent in our licensing. That if it was an extension, there's the gun. So not a problem to go up to and do the same hours as the gun, but we are very, very concerned with this completely leap out for these two nights, and it's our duty to raise that as councillors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just can I just tap in it? So just tap in it. I've got my colleague here as well, Carolyn. But we've been operating for 10 years in this area. We've never had any complaints. We specifically try and deal with primarily the African Caribbean, the working class, and those minorities who exist in the area who can't really afford to go to other spaces. There haven't been any, well, we don't have any major issues of that nature. But I'll bring in Carolyn.
Hi, my name's Carolyn, and I'm one of the business partners. I understand and hear your concerns. With regards to the gun, quite often, even when we've had attends, they have finished after us. So I'm not quite sure on their license times and whether or not they have attends where they go on after. In addition to that, one of the main reasons for wanting and for needing to go on to after is because the money we make from the bar, we put back into the CIC. So with regards to like the women groups and the other,
I think they've frozen.
They're frozen, yeah, frozen.
Yeah, it's not just me, I don't think, is it?
No. All we can do is either come back to her and move on to the next person, maybe.
Yes, but Matt Gray.
But the only problem is the applicant then isn't present, you see, that's the only other thing.
No, I appreciate that. We've got Matt Gray who's raised his hand. I don't know who Matt Gray is, so perhaps Matt could tell us who he is before he makes his point.
Hi, apologies. I'm not actually here to talk about this issue. Sorry, I was a former resident of Canalside Studios, and so I was meant to be on for the earlier discussion. Unfortunately, I'm at work, so I had to pop off, and I was just wondering if there had been any resolution to that, or what the status was of that discussion.
Okay.
Apologies if that's not in order.
That's all right, don't worry. We concluded the discussion in public. We haven't yet made a decision. We'll make a decision later today, and the applicant will be notified verbally tomorrow afternoon, and they'll get the decision in writing within the next week or so.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, is Kevin back? We have one participant here from all of the events. Is that the same people?
Chair, I've noted that, oh, he's coming, I think he's coming, he's rejoining now, he's rejoining.
Okay. Hello again. Can you hear us?
He's muted, he's muted.
Yes, yes, we can. Sorry, we lost connection.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to represent Bar. It's for another case that we are discussing, but not for this particular case.
Okay, thank you. So let's back to New Dawn again. Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much of what I said you actually heard.
Well, the last thing I remember that you said was that sometimes the gun has events which finish after your tents. And you're
yes,
not
so I was just
they have tents.
Yes, so I was just a little bit confused by the timings but then that Councillor Webb had said, had stated. But the money we make from the bar enables us to put on activities like the Well Street Festival, the Woman to Woman's group, well, this year's Well Street Festival, and the one for next year if we're permitted to do so. The Woman to Woman's group, we run workshops whereby we enables elderly people in the community, we help them with completing their Windrush compensation forms. So the volunteers that come in, we have to pay them. So the main purpose, and as stated, we're not looking to have this license on, on a regular, but the number of tens that we are permitted to have are not sufficient for the demand. We've operated in this space at 206 Well Street for nearly 10 years now. There has never been, touch wood, any major incidents or big incidents at all. We're part of the Well Street People's Traders Alliance, and also we are in a WhatsApp group with other bars and pubs in the Hackney. And whenever there's incidents or anything that's gone on like this, it's shared information. We're already on alert, and if necessary, we take precautions, whether it be to shut our shutters on one occasion. But we've never had any. We've never had any incidents.
Also, can I say that Councillor Webb, I'm a resident of Hackney for 58 and a half years, and just to qualify that, Well Street Market Well Street Market is a market street in activities, loud shouting the odds, fruit and veg, this, etc., whatever it was in years gone by. The market has died since the pedestrianisation 20 years ago to improve the market, which has failed. And in terms of the actual activities, we are very, very mindful of, one, myself being a black publican, a black licensee, knowing full well that much of the time there are going to be complaints directed at any activities which may incorporate a community who will make noise, etc., outside of the premises. So we try and keep everything down to a bare minimum. And I think that if you was to do a poll on the street, you would find that the New Dawn is known as a community hub that actually incorporates everybody and anybody from there. Yeah, that's how it is at the moment.
Okay. Can I raise a few questions? I mean, I think we've heard opening statements. I think at this point we'll consider ourselves moving on to the discussion phase, unless Councillor Suso Runge has any clarification questions at this point.
No clarification at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I have a couple of concerns. One is that your landlord is objecting to this. And, you know, with the best will in the world, I don't think that's a great start to trying to launch later night operations on a slightly more regular basis. You know, it just sort of smacks of some difficulties. And one of the things that has been raised here is that I believe in your submission, as I read it, it sounds as though you do sell off sales. And I don't think that you actually have a license for off sales.
No.
Sorry, just to interrupt. So during COVID, the laws were relaxed in order to enable you to do off sales. So no, we don't have off sales at the moment, but there was a period where
during the lockdown,
you were able to do so. The reason why we went through a process of applying and speaking to the police licensing, Metropolitan Police licensing about it, was because, like many other small independent businesses, we were looking at ways in which to survive. So one of the things we were going to do was deliveries. It's something that was still on the cards, but we didn't actually do. So we've not been operating outside.
Can I just qualify that was a standard activity that enabled loads of local businesses across the UK.
No, I understand that. So the question now becomes: Are you still selling off sales?
No, we don't. I think that the Speechly document had a number of gross misrepresentations and terminological inexactitudes, but I think that's because whoever put it together didn't really look into it. It seemed like it was a rushed document, but there are things which are completely out kilter with what we do.
That's mainly because the landlord is not aware of what we actually do or the work that we do. And I say that because I know that from other councillors who they've said, well, they've asked them what it is exactly that we do. They've not really taken the time to speak to us or to engage with us to that degree to find out the full extent of what we do.
Can I just put something else to you then? We've already established that as things stand at the moment, your premises doesn't have planning permission for the hours that you want to run. So normally what we would do in a circumstance like this is to say, if we decided that we were going to give you the license for those extra hours, we would say with an advisory that you get your planning permission sorted out. Now, in this particular case, because you've got your freeholder who is your landlord, who is against that, I don't actually see how you're going to be able to do that, because I think you're going to need the freeholder to be endorsing the planning application to actually get the hours that you need. See what I mean? So we're in a bit of a double bind here. There's a part of me which is feeling you might be better advised to go back to your landlord and to see if you can reach some kind of agreement about how you want to work it. And it might involve, as you say, something along the lines of, we're not planning to do this every weekend, but we don't get enough opportunity to do it with the tens that we're allowed to have at the moment. So you could have built into your contract something along the lines of, you know, we will do this on no more than 25 occasions a year or something like that. And you might, so in other words, what I'm suggesting is that it may be a way forward for you to go back and have a conversation with your landlord to see if you can reach a mutual agreement. Then you could resubmit and get the planning in order. But as it is at the moment, I feel very uncomfortable, frankly, about the idea of giving you a license, which I don't see that you're going to be able to get rubber stamped through the planning department. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I understand. Can I just ask a question? Sorry, Mr. Hewitt, the planning permission, the times, licensing times for planning permission, can you just repeat what those are again on the premises?
I made a note of those actually. The planning permission has hours of 9 to 2300, and on Sundays 9 to 2030. So 30, on a Sunday.
Okay.
So, so partly what I'm saying is, I kind of think it's a question of getting your ducks in a row, to make the best case you can. And we're slightly out of sync here with what you need to do first, I think. Do you understand where I'm getting to? Because, as I say, I feel very uncomfortable about agreeing to hours that I can't see that you could get the actual planning permission for, because you're not on the same page as your landlord at the moment.
Yeah, no, we understand.
It's always been. I think it's always been the case. But I'm dealing with the church, which is going to be enormously difficult. But we shall see.
Could I suggest? I mean, you know, it's not my case to tell you what to do here, but clearly you're a community interest company which is doing a lot for the community. And I'm sure that if you have some sort of, you know, community representation that you could draw on when you're in consultation with your landlord, that you might be able to get a little bit further down the road with them. But you know, that's my observation. Councillor Suso-Ronje, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say exactly to follow on from what the Chair has just said, it really sounds very good and interesting what you're doing, and it's very worthy, and we really appreciate that. But we can only work within this very strict sort of regulatory licensing planning world. So we can't, we really have to make decisions in regard to that. So I think the advice you've been given by the Chair would be really, really helpful, because I think if you get that community impact as well, that will be beneficial to any other application that you make, and also to your landlord. So I think that the advice you've been given by the Chair, I think, is very important, and I would encourage you to follow it, because we would like to see you succeed in your endeavours, which sound really excellent.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. All what you said there. We will make those endeavours. What I'm looking to do, and what we've tried to do, is to see if we could extend to 12 o'clock, a midnight situation, etc., so that we could then at least not be in this position. In terms of the landlord, yes, we've tried speaking. We've actually had a formal meeting in which we were promised that what we're going to do is move you across the road. And I don't want to go deep into it. I had a large girder come through the centre of the shop during the building works, of which they basically said to me, "It's your problem. You get on with it." They moved the girder. They fixed in part what they had to do. I said, "Well, you're the church. For God's sake, you have to handle me better than this. You can't do that in terms of what we do, and in terms of how we serve the community." It was completely ignored, and they just went on with what they're going on. So I have, honestly, for me personally, I have no faith in what's going to happen. I will make the representations which you've made, which you've suggested, Penny. Where, you know, they are solid. I will do that. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that it's one of those situations. I think we now need to be looking at a different borough, because it's not working. It's still, or I've got to look for something which is a disused community centre, or a centre in which we can actually do something which serves the needs of local people in the area. Right now, I've got at least 9 people who have approached us regarding funeral wakes, funeral bits and bobs. They can't afford to use the Hackney Centre down at Hackney Marshes. They can't afford to use the Round Chapel Church at nearly £3,000, etc. So they're now coming to us. And they're constantly coming to us and saying, "Well, Kev, can you please help us? Can you somehow assist us?" I'm finding a situation which...
Can I just interrupt for a moment, because I can see that Councillor Webb, who is one of your local councillors, has raised her hand. There are a couple of things I was going to suggest. One was that that it might be worth having a conversation offline, in other words, not in a public meeting, with your local councillors about all of this.
Sorry, who are our local councillors? I only know one.
That's
Okay.
Councillor
Ian,
Rathbone.
Ian
Ian
Rathbone.
Rathbone.
Ian Rathbone's the only
Yeah,
councillor with
Councillor Rathbone
visitor.
is not a councillor for this particular area. Councillor Webb
Ah,
is one of the councillors for this area. So,
Never,
oh,
never seen.
okay.
Never seen.
Never met her before.
and I'm sure we can let you know who your councillors are. It's not difficult to find them. But my suggestion would be that you might have a conversation with them first before approaching the landlord. And
You sat at that meeting.
I don't know what Councillor Webb's got to say on that, but let's hear from her.
Can't hear. You're muted.
Thank you. What I wanted to say is, in looking at increasing your hours to do licensing to increase the take on the bar to sport, I mean, it's great, and you have our total support, but we want and we have a need to be consistent. And if you looked at applying or modifying your request so that you match, and I'm going to go back to the gun pub hours, they have automatic extensions for Sundays and bank holiday weekends as well. So maybe that's when you were thinking they're going over their hours. But if you matched the extension, and that would extend your hours over the entirety of the week, you've got the support of the councillors. So that would be our recommendation to you.
Okay.
Can I just ask quickly some advice from Amanda and possibly David? Are we able to sort of adjourn this with a view to sort of modifying potentially, or would the applicants have to withdraw it altogether and then make a new application?
I think the applicant can ask for an adjournment. I don't see any reason why not.
Can I just say, we would like to have an adjournment. We would like to possibly look into, even if we extend hours to 12, if we're able to, we would like to have some time to meet with our local councillor who we've never met. I understand that's you, Jessica, Councillor Webb, just to have a discussion. Some of what you just suggested would help us. Like I said, we're not looking to do this every single weekend at all. So even if it is a case of there's stipulations as to the amount of times we can do so, we can work with that. So if we can have an adjournment, if we can first meet with our local councillors, then speak with our landlord, who, as I stipulated, have no idea what we do. I think
that would be a really good idea.
Yes.
Just one thing I want to advise you before you go, which is that if we were to give you a license with extended hours, it wouldn't be the licensing department that would tell you how many times a year you can do that. That's something that would be much more likely to be in your lease with your landlord.
Okay.
And part of the reluctance sometimes for licensing to just grant a license for extended hours is because once we've granted the license to your premises, even if you decide to close up and go away in 3 months' time, the premise still has that license. So even though you're telling me now that you're not planning to do it every weekend, the person who comes in after you may well be planning to do it every weekend, and we've got no control over that, you see. So,
Penny, that's exactly where, don't get me wrong, but the reason for pushing this, right, is that we got to a point where it was just like, this is uneconomical, yeah? So what we need to do is either go for a 2 o'clock license or find a way in which we extend the existing license so that we're not utilizing 2 at the same time. It means that we get to incorporate more events and more things for local people. That's all we wanted to do. Yeah?
Okay. I mean, I can't believe that we are not going to find some agreement here, actually. But I just think that we're a bit premature in this hearing to do it today.
Definitely.
So if it's all right, I'm going to leave you to liaise with the licensing department about whether or not it's better to postpone this hearing or to withdraw it and put in another application later. But I think that's probably the best way forward.
If you're in agreement for us to adjourn it, we would like to adjourn it, please. And Councillor Webb, if I can email you separately, and making arrangements to meet. That would be great. And Mr. Tuitt may be in contact with you after I've spoken with Councillor Webb.
Good. Okay.
No problem.
Councillor Suso Ronge, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I just want to say that I hope they don't leave the borough and go elsewhere. So I do hope that you come to a workable solution and wish you all the best.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.
We hope so too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and
Yeah,
we'll
much
be in touch.
appreciated, everybody.
So would we get something in writing about it being adjourned and a deadline date, or?
Perhaps you can advise
Yeah.
Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we will confirm it's been adjourned. It will be for the licensing service to confirm how long they can adjourn for, because I don't know the time limits on their application, how quickly it needs to be determined.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we understand the position that you all are in.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that was a bit quicker. It strikes me that we've now been in this meeting for just over 2 hours, and I wonder if people might like just a short comfort break. Shall we take 5 minutes and come back together at 16:15? Is that all right?
Yes, Chair, doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself?
Good. All right. See you all back here in 5 minutes. Hello again, everybody. Right. Let's see, who are we missing? So this item is regarding 22 Shoreditch High Street. Who is here for the applicant? Are you able to tell me who you are?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Mike Nixon, representing the applicant.
Okay, Mike Nixon. I've just got a mobile phone number for you there, but you're Mike, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And is the applicant here with us today or not?
Yes, Mohammed Ray should be there as well. I'm sure he'll confirm.
Oh, hi. Hi, Penny.
Hi, Mohammed. Hi. Good. Okay. Good. So we know who you both are. And I think then, if Amanda is back again, Amanda North, are you there? Yes, she is. Good. And is Amanda Griggs with us as well?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Good. Okay. And Shanning's with us too, so I think we can crack on. So at that point then, Suba, would you mind outlining this case, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the next item we are going to consider is for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for 22 Shoreditch High Street for late night refreshment from 2300 to 5 a.m. Monday to Sunday, as stated within the report. We have still representation remains from the police and licensing. The applicant has provided some additional conditions. The document has been circulated, and I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, I think it's, is it Mike who's going to?
Yes.
Mike, would you like to speak to the application, please?
Certainly. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Nixon, Director of In Confidence Licensing Consultancy, here today representing Wamik Mirza, the proposed premises license holder. Joining me is Mohammed Ray, one of the business owners, and he's the manager of LDK, 22 Shoreditch High Street. LDK stands for London Doner Kebab. Mohammed, like me, coincidentally, is a former police officer. He was working in the Met, whereas I was in Merseyside. And he'll be able to answer your questions about the operational side of the business. This application is for a premises license to allow the provision of late night refreshment from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily. There are no sales of alcohol. We fully acknowledge the status of your special policy area, and we created an operating schedule which addresses each of the licensing objectives. We're confident that under the strict regulation of a premises license, the business will not add to any of the cumulative impact concerns that exist locally. But following consultation with the licensing authority and the police, and I'm very grateful for their help in this regard, we've offered further conditions which I believe has just been confirmed have been circulated to you members already. Those are to go alongside our operating schedule. So the application now to be considered is still 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., but this takeaway shop will close at 2 a.m. and thereafter only offer deliveries. I'll say now that, and I'm sure Mohammed will confirm this, the priority for my clients is to be able to open for takeaway until 2 a.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Because I'm aware the police have a little bit concern about it being open all week till 2 a.m. It was disappointing and concerning that the incident on the 3rd of July, which the police are bound to mention now and was in their representation, but this happened under the operation of a valid temporary event notice and not a premises license. The police have kindly acknowledged that the staff at the premises did assist the police with the investigation. But one purpose of the temporary event notices, and there have been a number of them, was to enable the management to risk assess the business late at night and to train the staff in anticipation of the submission of the premises license application. The incident that occurred on the 3rd of July could have occurred anywhere, could have occurred in a taxi queue, in a bus stop. It was fortunate that my clients had an effective CCTV system in place to be able to assist the police. Had they been operating under the terms of a premises license with effective SIA security staff, this incident would most likely not have occurred, at least not at this location. The LDK staff and management now fully appreciate the need for SIA security staff to be employed to deter trouble. It's noteworthy that LDK operated under temporary event notices for 5 more weekends after this particular incident, with no incidents. This is because SIA staff were on duty. I'm very happy to talk through any of the conditions offered in our application if you wish. They're shown from page 103, alongside the changes and the additions circulated yesterday. Otherwise, can I or Mohammed answer any of your questions?
Thank you very much. Councillor Suso-Ronga, have you any questions at this stage for the applicant?
Yeah, yes, if you don't mind, Chair, I just wanted clarity. You were saying that they were operating under 10s, and why now? Or why were you operating under 10s? Why was there not an application before, sooner? I'm just a bit curious as to why you've been using 10s and now you've made this application. So could you just clarify the timescale here for me, please? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Mohammed will be able to explain when the business started and everything else, but I think they've been operating during the daytime, but in order to operate late night refreshment, they either needed a premises license or temporary event notices. So they decided to operate for a number of weekends to risk assess the business while the premises license application was going through.
Right. So what you're saying is this is basically a risk assessment that you did, and it's that was your business model, basically. Do you think now, given what happened, that was a good thing to do, or do you think it would have been preferable now, in hindsight, to have gone down the other route instead of taking this risk assessment journey? Because if you're taking a risk assessment journey, you must have assumed there was a risk.
Well, with respect, with every application that we make for a premises license, my business always conducts a risk assessment, and every single application we do is bespoke. So we're assessing against the 4 licensing objectives. The applications for temporary event notices for these several weekends were twofold. Clearly, they wanted to see whether there was viability of the business going late at night. But if they wanted to go beyond 11 o'clock at night, they needed to be covered because it's licensable after 11 o'clock at night, offering hot food or hot drink to the public. And also, of course, they're businessmen. They wanted to make a few bob. And so they approached me. I'm sure the police will confirm this, as will Mohammed, that there was an occasion when the police called in there and said, you shouldn't be operating here because you haven't got a premises license. So that stimulated their wish and an issue of temporary event notices, and simultaneously they approached my company with a view to having a long-term answer to this. But I asked them, so I applied for the premises license. At the same time, they've been running consecutive weekends with temporary event notices, and at the same time measuring any risks that might have been caused by the operation after 11 o'clock at night.
Well, thank you. You clarified. Thank you very, very much, and also you clarified the relationship that you have with the premises licensee. So that's all I'm going to ask you for the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think if we can, we'll move on then to hear from the police today. So, Amanda, could you make your representation?
There we go. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, our representations are mainly based around it being located in the special policy area, where we've seen a vast increase in serious violence and disorder in Shoreditch over the past few months to year. Footfall has increased. Behaviours and attitudes to drinking seem to have changed, and we seem to have seen a big increase in extreme levels of drunkenness and intoxication on the streets of Shoreditch. There are crowds of people on the streets after midnight in Shoreditch, and police regularly receiving complaints from residents in relation to ASB violence, litter and noise. Granting a late night licence here has potential to increase numbers hanging around the area. Although the venue is not selling food, by encouraging people to gather together whilst waiting for food gives a potential for violence and other disorder. As we saw, as much as, yes, the incident might not have happened, that we've already spoken about on the 3rd of July, had there been security there, the fact there's people gathering together already increases the risk of something like that happening again. And again, it could be anywhere, but as soon as you've got people gathering together, which is what happens at takeaways, that's when incidents like this have more propensity to occur. As their agent said, the police did visit the venue on the 4th of June at 3 o'clock in the morning to find it open and operating when it didn't have a licence of any sort in operation. They spoke to Mohammed then and explained to him that he needed either to get a premises licence in place or start applying for temporary event notices, which he then did. So the temporary event notices started as we got the application, more or less, for the premises licence. Other than the event on the 3rd of July, when they have assisted providing CCTV, then we haven't had any other incidents there. But so police are still concerned that because of where it is in the special policy area and the numbers in Shoreditch, that there is a risk, and certainly not till 5 o'clock in the morning all throughout the week would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask what your views are on their revised submission about takeaways until 2, but then only deliveries between 2 and 5?
Certainly deliveries only appease us quite a bit because you haven't got that people gathering around. I'd still be concerned during the week of people being there till 2 throughout the week. You just not getting the residents aren't getting any respite of people hanging around, and I'm not entirely sure, to be fair, sort of Monday to Wednesday, whether there'd be the business for that anyway. To be honest with you, if you're having security on, it might be something that's not worth doing. So I'd be cautious, certainly Sunday to Wednesday, but and certainly after 2 o'clock, having that just delivery only would certainly appease much more than being open till 5.
Does it make you in any way minded to withdraw your objection or not?
I don't feel I can withdraw completely just because of the fact that it is still in the special policy area, and I'm not convinced that it has completely warranted or gone above and beyond sort of mitigating circumstances or whatever to appease that. I still think there is the potential for a negative impact there, and I don't think it has completely allayed my concerns 100%. There might be bits and pieces that can be ironed out, but as it's 2 o'clock all through the week and then 5 o'clock for deliveries, still doesn't allay concerns at the moment.
Councillor Suso-Rongi, have you anything to add to that at all?
No, just to say that I have concerns likewise because of the LPD 10 and the special policy area. So I just really have concerns as Amanda Griggs has, and also I think if LPD SPA was met, then we could discuss core policy hours. But like I say, I don't think we're in that position yet. So I'm still concerned about that sort of effect that this might have, especially with those hours. So just to reiterate what's been said, really.
Perhaps we can talk a bit more about that in a moment in the discussion phase. But as it is, I think Channing is here to represent the licensing part. Is that right?
That's right. Thank you, Chair. So my representation can be found on page 126, Appendix B2, and it's primarily, again, in relation to the fact the premises is located in the special policy area. The hours being sought are sort of far in excess of our core hours, as well as being located in that area. There is some question mark around the planning for the site, which I understand now is being appealed. There was an application to change the planning status of the site. Currently, though, I believe that the planning status of the site says that it's got a specific condition which limits the opening of the site to from 10 a.m. to 11:30 Monday to Sunday. I do appreciate that the operators have used tents quite successfully, apart from the incident that's been noted. And they have offered some additional conditions in line with the suggested delivery. There still needs to be some clarification around the actual capacity of the premises. But I feel 5 a.m. every day it's too excessive for that particular area. Also, with regards to the suggestion about SIA, there haven't been any specifics yet provided regarding that. So on what days, at what times would they be on the site? Also, if there's going to be no one in the site after 11 p.m., is that the position that the applicant has suggested? Because it's only going to be deliveries after 11 p.m. And then that goes back to what is the capacity of the site. And yeah, I mean, I do have some other notes here, but that's it for now, Chair. I wouldn't have anything further to add.
So, thank you for that. Let's just be absolutely clear about what the current ask is. Could you fill us in on that, Mike, just to tell us exactly what you're asking for on how many days of different days of the week?
Yeah, I'm sure Mohammed won't contradict me. He'll back me up on this, but he did stress to me earlier today and yesterday that the primary thing that they're aiming for today is Thursday, Friday and Saturday nights to be able to go till 2 in the morning as a takeaway. They would like the option, although it's not a priority, to be able to offer deliveries thereafter. Earlier in the week, I believe that they would like to be able to be open till midnight, but perhaps Mohammed can correct me on that. With regard to the SIA, we did offer in the supplementary conditions, I offered a condition saying on those occasions when the premises shall be providing late night refreshment to visiting customers, in other words, people going into the shop beyond midnight, then the premises license holder must employ SIA registered security staff. And I've suggested from 11 p.m. until the last customer has left. This, over the recent weekends, has proved to be very successful. Mohammed can tell you a little bit more about the security staff he's got. It might be, I mean, in my experience, that security staff don't like to be told that they can only start at 11 o'clock at night. They like to start a lot earlier than that because otherwise they're writing off their earnings opportunity. But Mohammed will be able to tell you a little bit more about that. Can I pass you over to Mohammed? He might be able to answer some of these points.
Yes, Mohammed Scottish wants to make a contribution anyway. Hi, Mohammed.
Hi, Chair. Mike, absolutely fine with the suggestions you have put in. Fully back you up. Thursday, Friday, Saturday until 2 a.m. is perfectly fine, and the rest of the week, Sunday to Wednesday, if we can get up to 12 o'clock, that's absolutely fine with us as well. In regards to the security arrangements we have, because I'm sure Amanda's second that as well, because the Shoreditch High Street trend is they normally gets into the takeaways and everything busy after 11 o'clock. So we have got security in place with one of the best one in the whole area. And that actually comes on 10 o'clock till we have got arrangement until 3 o'clock with them. It depends on what we need. We normally shut at 2 o'clock anyway. We normally have got arrangement with him to be on the side with us from 10 o'clock starting till 3 o'clock in the morning. So just to be safe side, making sure everything has been closed and everything has been done and dusted. Regarding answering your question, Chen, regarding the capacity of the site, we have got internally quite a lot of, inside sitting wise, we have around about 20 people can sit inside, and it's standing around about another 20, 25. So in total, the premises can hold about 25 to 30 people all in one go. And that's the way it's been designed as well. So we have got some sitting arrangement, but like I said, we don't mind just taking it away, especially after 11 o'clock. So we just purely going to be basis on the takeaway basis after 11.
So can I just clarify then on
Sure.
this? You've got some seating there, and you've got about 20 seats. So earlier in the evening, do you operate as a restaurant? Do people come in and sit down, or?
That's right, Chair. We have got a sitting arrangement where 10 to 12 people can sit at a time. Okay, and we have got one big sofa going across there with the tables on there. And our suggestion is after 11 o'clock, we're going to be completely close the sitting, and it's purely going to be a takeaway business. So people come and take away their food, and they'll be out from the premises.
So you won't be providing them with seats to sit down and wait while they're waiting for their takeaways?
No. Because the best thing is if they just take away, and just because our service is quite quick, our turnaround time, especially in night times, is less than 5 minutes anyway. So just want to be actually giving them away.
So after 11 o'clock, you're saying a capacity of 30 people standing?
Correct.
Okay. I think one of the issues with regard to increasing the numbers of people on the streets in Shoreditch is essentially the number of people who could be queuing outside, which is a potential hazard from the police point of view. How often do queues stretch outside your shop?
Hardly unlikely, because we don't actually never have so far within 2.5, 3 months experience, not even a single time we had people actually standing outside as well. And we have fully instructed our SIA just to making sure that nobody actually be standing in front of the premises anyway. So he has to be making sure if someone actually, because we got right next to it, there's a club. So people stand next to us anyway, but not in front of our premises.
So could I ask Channing and Amanda, what are your views about the fact that there's a capacity then for 30 people standing waiting for their delivery to take away? Does that satisfy you that there aren't going to be people hanging around outside? Does that help to alleviate any of this cumulative impact at all, do you think?
Chair, I'm not sure how much it impacts the cumulative impact, but I mean, if they have SIA present and the people are inside the premises only to collect their food, it does go some way to alleviate some of my concerns, at least. It's just that those additional people within the area, again, depending on how long they stay there, etc., there's still the potential for the objectives to be undermined. Another point I'll add is there was some suggestion as well that the delivery drivers would be inside the premises, so they wouldn't be idling on their vehicles outside the premises. So if the delivery drivers are inside the premises waiting to deal with the takeaway orders by delivery, then what is the capacity of the premises then? Do you anticipate maybe 5 or 6 delivery drivers waiting inside the premises? Then what is the capacity of the premises for customers then if delivery drivers are waiting inside?
Okay, Mohammed, do you want to answer that?
All right, just answering this question, we have got a completely upstairs, which is purely vacant. So our plan is all the delivery drivers who's be coming in, they'll be going upstairs on the waiting area. So they're not going to be like interacting with anything with any clients or any customers in the premises. So upstairs is going to be the waiting area for them. When the food will be ready, they will get a notification electronically, and they will be coming downstairs and pick. And we have got a separate spot for them just to come and collect the food, which is completely side. So the entrance is from basically, we have got one entrance from outside and one entrance from inside as well. So they can come in inside and just take the food, and they can walk away from outside.
Okay.
Amanda, what's your view about this and the numbers of people inside, and whether or not that's going to alleviate?
It's certainly the fact that they're off the street and inside and you've got the security there is certainly much better than having them obviously queuing outside and down the road like we do at other places, unfortunately. So yeah, so that, I mean, it is helping, certainly. Yeah, it is making me feel better about the whole idea.
It's Mike here. If I can just add one final thing as well, just to point out, we've also committed to saying that the delivery riders after 11 p.m. will always use pedal cycles or electric vehicles.
Good.
Could I just ask you a question about that? Because how would yourselves, maybe the manager can answer this question, but how would you actually ensure that they only have electric vehicles or pedal vehicles?
We have actually requested the Uber Eats and deliveries as well because we have got our designated delivery manager. I have already discussed with him as well, and I make sure this is our special request. After 11 o'clock, all the drivers we've been sending to our premises, that has to be on just on our electric bikes and everything. It's no cars and bikes riders. We just need that. So he's agreed with this. And he said to me, he promised me that making sure that everyone who's coming in after 11 o'clock has to be on their pedal bikes.
So even though that's your request,
yeah,
does that mean 100% of the time your delivery drivers are only going to be, because I'm just mindful that if that is made as some sort of condition, you don't want to be creating a condition that you can't comply with and then we as a licensing service can't enforce either. So I'm just, if it is 100% of the time guaranteed.
Okay, like I just said, they're the third parties, how I can't influence them as well. But yes, what I can do, being like I said, ex-police officer myself, just making sure I can do my monitoring as well. And if anything incident happens or they've been sending them, I will be making sure that I'll straightaway report to them. And because this is what we have already agreed with them and with the account manager, I've already spoken to him, I discussed with him, I explained that thing very clearly to him. This is what our condition according to, and is because of our licensing, this is what we have already given our suggestion to you guys as well. So we have to making sure that we need to honor it. And he promised me, of course, he's going to do that as well. But like I just said, there's a third party. If anything happens, okay, like I said, we haven't even started yet because of this thing. Once this goes in there, if any incident happen, if they do actually send it to me, that will be my job, is just to making sure that I'll report it. And I'm very clear that we have to follow these guidelines, and whatever the conditions have given it to you, we'll abide that definitely.
Okay.
Shannon, can I just clarify what 4 hours would be for this service in Shoreditch?
The core hours are the same as what the core hours are in the policy, Chair. So it wouldn't necessarily be extended because there were late night refreshment. It would apply as the normal core hours.
So it's until 11 o'clock or 22:30 on Sunday, is that right? 22:30
on Sunday.
2300 Monday to Thursday? No.
Yep.
And midnight Friday and Saturday?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. That's correct. So it's Monday to Thursday, 0800 to, well, not 08, sorry, 11 to 2300. Friday and Saturday to midnight, and Sunday to 22:30.
So at the moment, even if you were to operate in core hours, you still haven't actually got planning permission for those hours. There's a part of me that's wondering, you know, why don't you try operating with core hours, and you know, establish your reputation that way, and then possibly apply for an extension later on. Is that something that you would be at all attracted by?
Yeah, Chair, it's like this chicken and egg situation, like I've heard from the previous two cases you've heard. planning, I know it's desirable, but it's not legally essential for planning permission to be in place. Certainly is in Scotland when we do applications up there, but not in England and Wales. You know, we can offer an undertaking. These premises will not operate under a premises license that goes beyond the hours that are approved under planning. Now, the planning status is being appealed at the moment. So whether you grant this license or not, these premises will not risk enforcement action from planning. So that's the situation we've got. With regard to the core hours, I know we've got two important hurdles to overcome. We're in the special policy area, obviously. Your policy LP10 states that if an applicant can demonstrate that he or she will not add to the cumulative impact, then the default situation over the hours will be guided by your LP3, your core hours policy. But even your LP3 core hours policy acknowledges that later hours may be considered. So it's just going back to the licensing objectives all over here. Whatever the question, it's always the licensing objectives.
It does say, yes, it does say that later hours may be considered, but you know, it's quite a big ask to go 5 o'clock in the morning in one fell swoop when you're only just starting the business. So I mean, there's part of me which is thinking, why don't you go 4 hours for your takeaway, and maybe your delivery is up until 2 o'clock in the morning? Is that a business model that that you could live with?
Maybe Mohammed should answer that one.
Hi, Chair. Initially, when we started it, as you know, we have got a planning permission already in place for the core hours. The issue what we had is, unfortunately, with the shortage, the way the whole things works on the street, this completely dead for the food business until 11 o'clock. Okay, so unfortunately, we couldn't be able to survive around there, and we wanted in like £200 a day, and it was really, really difficult for us. And then once we actually start working on a model where we only need it for 3 days, like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday till 2 o'clock, it does actually giving us a bit kind of survival time around there. And I understand the concerns you guys have put in the place, but which I appreciate that as well. So that's why we have actually put those conditions in there. I said, okay, we start compromising it in terms of if we until 2 o'clock, if we get for 3 days, okay, we will be in sort of a position where we can survive as a business, which we have actually done a lot of investment in. And rest of the weeks, we are fine with 12 o'clock as well. We can shut at 12 o'clock. But unfortunately, the trend and the people, they're not coming out from the bars and clubs next door or there until like 11, half 11, 12 o'clock. So they don't actually need any things to eat. They will not need to eat. So
yeah, well, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to picture it from the point of view of the policy. So the policy is about trying not to add to the numbers of people on the street. And in a sense, what you're saying is that if most of your business is around midnight, between midnight and 2, or 11 and 2, you are essentially just sort of generating more people on the street at that time, if that's when you're going to be open. So, you know, the policy is aimed at trying to avoid increasing those crowds and increasing those numbers of people on the street at that time. You know, it's very difficult to get away from the fact that as soon as we offer a license outside of core hours, there's a knock-on consequence to the numbers of people milling around in the streets.
Okay. Just to answer that, Chair, with respect, what actually been happening is we've been sharing the load, basically, in terms, if there's a corner shop right on number 1 Great Western Street, okay, if you come across from there, they open till 5 o'clock. And on that junction, I'm sure Amanda, everyone actually can second that, there's a chaos. There's always a chaos around there. People been standing out there, and there's lots of issues because of they got license at 5 o'clock, and they've been like madly busy on that corner over there. Since we have open, okay, the people have actually coming towards us as well. So the trend over there is slightly getting better. Okay, as soon as we shut, okay, there's a huge crowd goes there, and because unfortunately people actually need to eat that time anyway, and they don't have any like even space to accommodate that many people that we have got. So we have got a larger space to accommodate, and the burden in other words, we are actually trying to help, not to actually making a bit more crowd on that kind of on the whole main Shoreditch High Street. We're just trying to like, I personally believe that we are helping a lot to reduce the gathering on that area.
Chair, can I just add a point there? It's Mike again, by the way. I was responsible for policing of licensed premises in Liverpool City Centre for a number of years as the licensing sergeant there. And in my experience of late night refreshment venues, there's two arguments to it. One, as Amanda has mentioned, you just want people to go home. You don't want them, if there's going to be any flashpoints, any trouble, it might be in taxi queues or this, that, and the other. You just want people to go home. But the alternative view is it's somewhere, when they know that there's a place that's licensed and properly regulated that's open, it's somewhere for police maybe to focus their attention if necessary. But also there's a particular positive effect of having such businesses properly run in accordance with a strict premises license with CCTV and SIA staff. Such venues can provide a safe haven for distressed or vulnerable people who are seeking some sort of sanctuary and safety. So I like to see the positive side of having these things. And with that in mind, I would respectfully ask you to look beyond sticking rigidly to your core hours policy.
Okay. Councillor Suso-Ronge, have you got any questions or comments?
No further comments. I think we've come to a sort of end situation here, so I have no further comments other than we have to keep within the regulatory environment, but I appreciate representations.
Could I just ask one other question? Because we've also got this business of the takeaways, albeit on bikes, which are a bit quieter, between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. That's going very late, isn't it? Is that absolutely essential to your viability, do you think? I mean, if we were to stop the deliveries at 2 o'clock as well.
Mohammed?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Chair. I mean, to be honest with you, it's not very much essential. We don't mind if you just can give us like deliveries till 3 o'clock. We're happy to take that one. That's no problem. Instead of 5 o'clock, if you say, okay, let's do it till 3 o'clock, that's fine with us. That's no problem.
Okay. All right. I think Councillor Suso-Ronge and I need to discuss the pros and cons of all of this outside of the public meeting decision. So thank you all very much. I think we'll just take closing comments from everybody at this point for us to go away and have a think about. So let's start off with Channing first.
Hi, Chair. Nothing really further to add other than what I've stated already and what's in my representations. It's at the discretion of the committee whether they feel it's appropriate or not, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, echo what Channing said. You've heard obviously our concerns, and it's more based on policy than anything else. And I'll leave it to you guys as a committee to make your decision.
Okay, and Mohammed and Mike?
Thank you. Your decision today isn't a binary one of grant or refuse. You could add conditions or change the hours, of course, but your decision must be evidence-based and proportionate and necessary to promote the licensing objectives. We recognise that we have these two policies to convince you over, and we're in the special policy area, albeit that, as Amanda's pointed out, we're right on the fringe of it, right on the edge, but nevertheless, we're still in the special policy area. I believe that you can have faith in Mohammed and his team. We respectfully ask that you grant the amended application today, certainly for Thursday, Friday and Saturday till 2 o'clock, with the reassurance that they'll have SIA in place. Perhaps Mohammed would like to have the last word.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much, guys, and hopefully look forward for the best outcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
Well, as with everybody else, we'll make a decision later on today, and we'll be notified verbally tomorrow at some point, and you'll get it in writing. Not too long. Okay. Thank you very much.
Chair.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, last man standing. So we've got one TENS application that we need to look at now. Who is speaking on behalf of that? Is that you, Mr. Poulos? It is, okay.
Yeah, yes, it is. Hi, everyone.
And let me just have a quick look if I know who everybody else is.
And it should be as well my partner, Wayne. He should be on this meeting as well. I'm pretty sure he's somewhere.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, Wayne. Yeah, Wayne. Yeah, he's there. He's here as well. Yes. So it's two of us.
So it's you and Wayne. And okay, good. In that case, the situation here is reversed to the applications. So in this particular occasion, it's not that I ask you to speak first, but I will ask those people who are asking us to revoke the TENS, if you like. So if I can start off, is it Channing or David who's going to speak from the licensing department?
Sorry, Chair, I have to present the case, and is in this case for the temporary event notice is just on environmental protection and police.
Okay, so environmental protection, I'm not here, is that right?
That's right, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. So licensing haven't got anything to say. Environmental protection have made their objections known on the basis of noise, primarily, I believe, isn't it? And the police. So let's hear what Amanda has to say.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair.
Suba, you have to introduce it, don't you? I'm sorry.
Right.
I forgot about your introduction. I'm sorry.
No
Please
problem,
introduce it.
Right. Temporary notice was given to the licensing service in respect of the premises Bar A Bar 133 to 135 Stock Newington Road for an event to be held from 3:30 a.m. till 4:30 a.m. on both the days 28th of August 2022 and 29th of August 2022. We have received objection from the police and the environment protection. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good. Okay, back to you, Amanda. If you can explain to us why you don't want them to be open for that extra hour.
Police initially objected because we'd got some noise. There had been noise complaints, and in another multi-agency meeting that this had been discussed, there had been noise complaints there, and we had some issues previously with dispersal and people hanging around at the end of the evening for quite some considerable time. I think I submitted photos that were about an hour apart with a large crowd outside on both occasions. Since submitting, my colleague submitted objections originally. Since submitting these, I have heard from venue, and they have given us a bit of an outline about what they're trying to do at dispersal, and there's been some conversation about that, and they have given me some numbers of 4 SIA. I think, is it 4 you said? I can't remember now what she says. Four. Yeah, it was 4 SIA, which has allayed my concerns considerably. Also, we've had a discussion around the dispersal a bit more. So I was here, in essence, although my concerns were more allayed than they were, I was in support of my EP colleagues that aren't here. So I was trying to support them a bit as well with this. But yeah, I mean, the venue, to be fair, has come back and answered everything we've asked of them. So I would say I was here mainly then for today just to support my EP colleagues.
Okay. In that case, can I ask Wayne and Gerlakos what their comments are, please, on why you feel that you're going to be able to have this extra hour responsibly and not disturb all your neighbours?
Well, we didn't. Our club actually. Cheers to the chair. Sorry, I apologize. Not, I'm Wayne. Okay, what happened is that the club opened on from 10 until 3:30, and the officer claimed that it was witnessed that there was no dispersal for between 02 hours and 03 hours, and we must make stated that the club is open till 3:30, and these people who was actually outside. They came up to smoke, or because of the time, you know, it's summer, more extra people. We are in a basement actually, so more people would come upstairs. But apart from dispersal, we were told by the police and the council themselves, who had advised us wisely and help us during this time to deal with our patrons. And we listened to them and we obeyed them. The main thing they say to us, make sure BT Road, the residential area, is always no patron on that. And we have done that really well for 16 years. We've been there, and we have get over 200 temporary event notice. And we have done greatly with the temporary event notice. The reason for this temporary event notice is a weekend of carnival, and we have our people on BT Road and on the surrounding area in the community would like to enjoy carnival at our club, you understand? But we work hard. We work hard for 16 years, and we will continue to work hard to keep people dispersal going. And if there's improvement, we have to make the improvement, because this is our livelihood. This is what we depend on. This is what our children depend on. I don't have no more work. I have to depend on this, so I keep it safe at all times. We don't do nuisance to the public. Of course, there will be complaints from neighbors, but are they genuine? We have sent many CCTV to the licensing department, proving that many of these incidents that they say occur and these noise that are occurring is wrong on the club. Even the police themselves witnessed one incident when they stop at the club that they get disturbance, that the neighbors, they are the one who creating this noise. Even the environment officer on that same day, they came to the club and find that there was noise coming from, not from us, but from the neighbors next door. So we are not here to create noise or make. The 16 years we have been operating, and we try our very best, and we take advice from the authorities. We are not here to cause any problem to anyone. We are just here to make sure our family live happy, and we are not here to make noise. People accuse us wrongfully, and you can speak to the people in the licensing department who request CCTV, even when we are closed during the December, Christmas, and New Year's. We've been told, the authorities has been told that we've been opening, and we wasn't even opening. So they request CCTV on 2 occasions. They have witnessed that these things are not really from the club itself. And also, we received letters from the environment officer last month that although they get the noise complaint, they have not witnessed any of this complaint. So I understand if the officer came 2 o'clock when we should be operating, because it's 3:30 our license finished during the weekend. And also if they came back at 3 o'clock and witnessed people was standing outside, which again, we should finish at 3:30. But the main fact is that we would like to improve. If there's more improvement, we of course we have to improve. Yeah, we are not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and we have to protect the public. If that's remember, bar is not a place where there's lots of there's any crime there. Yeah, the police has never arrested anyone there.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Can I ask a question about your license as it stands at the moment? Do you have a limit to the number of smokers who could be outside the club at any one time?
I think so. Wayne left, but we don't have a such, but we try to limit the number of people who go outside to smoke. Having said that, that particular night that you got some pictures from the police, which was sent to you over, it was quite a hot evening. And unfortunately, it was a busy evening. I think we had about 150, 160 people. And a lot of people were outside just because it was really, really hot. But usually we do limit it to a number of people who go outside. We have between 10 to 50 people at one time. But unfortunately, that evening was a really, really hot evening, and people tend to go out more than usual.
Yeah. I mean, it is a problem, isn't it? Because at that time of the night, if you've got 10 to 15 people outside smoking, especially if they've been drinking as well, and they're not very aware of how much noise they're making, that can be a pretty huge disturbance for local people.
No, as such. If we, because obviously where we move the patrons to smoke on that side of the road, of the main road, we never had any complaints. The only complaints we had is coming from the side of the road, the Bitley Road, but it's coming from two neighbors who actually living about 100 yards away from the actual club. But we never had direct complaint from the actual club. It's just because there's other events taking place. People, bear in mind, on that particular road, a lot of people use that road to park their cars and go to the kebab shop, which is around the corner, or to the pub around the corner, or to the restaurant. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, traffic on that road, and unfortunately, we are the ones who always pick up, the blame. But having said that, when we do patrol the road, the street, and we force everyone to go on the side of the road, of the main road, we hardly had any complaints. We had over 110 events since July last year, over 42 tents applied, and we never had any complaints.
What time do those tents normally finish?
The finishing at 4:30. So we do 1 tents over over the weekend, Friday and Saturday. They start 10 o'clock until 4:30. And to be honest, we never had any complaints when we put the tents in. It's only when.
So why do you think the police and the environmental health have complained on this occasion?
Because as I said, it was it was a very hot day, a hot evening, and more people outside than they usually are. And unfortunately, because we had some issues as well with some of the fans at the club, they weren't working. We had, unfortunately, more people desire to be outside than inside the venue. Usually, that's not the case. When the police has turned up out of the blue, or the licensing, they have witnessed how we operate. It's never been the case. It just happened to be that evening.
So have you discussed with the police how you would handle that situation if it happened?
So what we're going to do moving forward, especially for the rest of the summer, we are getting more funds for the venue, which means people will be more comfortable to stay at the venue rather than going outside, and then using an extra security who will be where the smoking area is to enforce to the people to keep the voice down. But we've done this before, actually, numerous occasions. In-house works very, very, very well. It just happens to be one of those busy kind of like evenings with being really hot, and unfortunately, we did have more people being outside. So having an extra staff, being part of the management team to help out and prevent people from speaking loud or being very loud when outside, that will help us to mitigate any noise coming from the club.
Okay. Perhaps I can just turn to PC Griggs again and say, PC Griggs, at this point, are you fairly comfortable about this tent application?
Yeah, so I know they've had several before now that have run without an issue, and so we've had a brief chat, and we can have a further chat again if we need to before about how to utilise their security better to help disperse everybody around the venue and make sure there aren't crowds gathering. So I'm quite happy to do that again another in the morning or something tomorrow. Yeah, but before.
Can I say something? Sorry. We've never had any complaints when people leaving the venue at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, depending on what the license it's at the time. We only had occasionally complaints because we had other events taking place around. Can I just point out as well, there is a big warehouse around the corner where sometimes there's so many people on the actual road coming from this warehouse that it's impossible for us, including my team and the security, to mitigate any complaints coming from, because it's not a direct from the venue. And unfortunately, there's a lot of cars being parked on that street, and they're creating a lot of noise. And my security and my team, we always do whatever it takes to prevent this, but sometimes it's a bit impossible to prevent any noise coming from a third party outside the club.
So the warehouse that he's talking about hopefully has been shut for recently, but I do know who you're talking about, and it was operating up till about a month or so ago, but hopefully the last month or so it shouldn't have been, and I'm hoping you haven't had people coming over since then, but it was prior to that, and it was causing issues which hopefully have now been dealt with and won't be happening. So we can have a quick chat anyway, just about, say, if you do get lots gathering outside, how to help disperse during the evening and how to keep that pavement outside the shop next to you, because you've got the fruit and veg shop, haven't you, next to you? how to keep that as clear as you can. And there is only so much you could do. We do understand that, and as long as we can see your security doing as much as they can to move people on and stuff, that's all we would ask.
Yes, I mean, can I just say as well, when we do always a temporary event notice events, we have 4 securities. We've got 2 on the door, 1 usually on the smoking area, and 1 going in and out the club just to make sure everything is secure. So yes, you're correct. We will have an extra security being in place, especially when they have so big events taking place at the venue, and especially when we do a late license to prevent and mitigate any issues coming from the venue, especially when they're smoking outside.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't feel that anybody needs to wrap this up, really. I mean, I kind of feel that we've heard from everybody. We know what you're going to say. So I think at this point we'll say thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We will have a chat about it now, and you should be able to find out tomorrow morning what our decision is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys, for having us. Appreciate it a lot on the behalf of Baribat.
Chair, can I just
Thank you
ask
very
though?
much.
Chair, could I just ask before you go, is that could we just clarify with the police whether or not, following what this discussion that they've now had with the premises user, are they minded to now withdraw their objection?
Yes,
Because then that means you would you know, would then not have to issue counter notice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yes, we'd be happy to.
Yeah.
If that helps. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Sorry. So what's going to happen? Sorry about that.
I
didn't hear.
think basically, I think you're going to
It makes it clearer.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Bye bye.
Good. Thanks, everybody. So it's, Amanda and Sheila and I need to have a little chat now.
Yeah. Right. I'm off. Anyway,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you.
There's a lot to get through, but we got